We are kicking things off with a classic isekai setup but with a spicy twist. Imagine being a game developer only to wake up trapped inside your own masterpiece as the ultimate bad guy. But before we jump straight into the chaos, let us hit the rewind button. We need to talk about the game itself and the unlucky dude, whose life is about to flip completely upside down. Picture this. It is the dead of night, and our guy Kim Woojin is finally squashing a bug that has been driving him crazy for weeks. He is putting the finishing touches on a specific character's storyline, Dekulin von Grahen U. Klein. And trust me, Dekulin is not your average run-of-the-mill NPC. He is a mid-tier boss, a major villain. So naturally, Woojin had to make one thing absolutely certain. No matter what choices the player makes, Dekulin is destined to meet a brutal end. After working himself to the bone to get every detail just right, Woojin is ready to crash. But right on cue in walks his ex-girlfriend. And here is the kicker. She is not just his ex. She is actually the head of the whole development team. They definitely had some good times back in the day, but things eventually went south. Woojin was a massive procrastinator who loved to slack off while she was a total workaholic, driven by pure ambition. She really tried to push him to level up in life, but honestly, it just was not enough. Fast forward 6 months and she's already found someone new. Anyway, she breezes into the room, glances at Dekulin on the monitor, and drops a massive bombshell. It turns out she based this doomed villain entirely on Woojin. His habits, his abilities, even his terrible personality. It was practically a digital clone. But before Woojin can even wrap his head around that insult, she spots her new guy waiting outside and just takes off, leaving him in silence. Now it is hitting 2 in the morning, and Woojin is still glued to his screen, obsessively tweaking the villain to make sure the gameplay is flawless. But the whole "this villain is actually me" thing is really rubbing him the wrong way. Because let's face it, Dekulin is absolute scum. He is hyped up as this childhood magical prodigy, placed on a massive pedestal for his so-called potential. But in reality, he is just an arrogant second-rate noble with a massive ego. His personality is so rotten that calling him a decent human being is a huge stretch. In the game's lore, he scales up and gets stronger over time, but he is always that one toxic character that players absolutely love to hate. Feeling a sudden spark of petty revenge, Woojin decides to mess around with Dekulin's code. He wants to give him a little something special. Since this guy is basically his digital twin anyway, he slaps on a brand new trait, comprehension. And hey, while he is at it, he decides to go crazy and stack some of his favorite overpowered perks: wealth, Midas touch, sharp eyesight, and iron will. But right after loading this doomed villain with a god-tier skill set, reality sets in. He definitely went way overboard. Panicking, he rushes to hit undo and bring the stats back to normal. Because a game-breaking bug right before launch day, no thanks. But right in that moment, his phone buzzes. A weird text just tells him to look out the window. Totally confused, Woojin peers outside only to freeze. There's a giant glowing hole tearing through the night sky, and before he can even blink, a massive bolt of lightning strikes straight down at his window. He does not even have time to scream before the world instantly goes black. When he finally opens his eyes again, he is not sitting at his desk anymore. He is trapped inside the body of Dekulin, the exact same villain who is 100% destined to die. While he is still freaking out over this absolute nightmare, Dekulin's sister kicks the door open and storms in. Looking furious, she immediately starts yelling at him for dodging his responsibilities as a high-ranking professor. Turns out the original Dekulin had been locked in his room crying over some girl instead of actually doing his job. She slams a massive stack of paperwork onto his desk and turns to leave, shooting him one last glaring warning to get his life together, making it crystal clear that she will not let him ruin their family's prestigious reputation. At first, Woojin desperately hoped he was just locked in some crazy vivid nightmare. But as the days roll by, the hyper-realistic details force a bitter truth down his throat. He has no idea if this is his version of the afterlife. I mean, getting fried by a random lightning strike usually does the trick. But one terrifying fact remains. He is now living and breathing as the ultimate bad guy of the universe he built from scratch. In case you forgot how bad this is, let me paint a picture. Dekulin is a mid-game boss. No matter what choices the main character makes, this guy is the source of all the misery in the game. He is public enemy number 1 and the reason half the cast goes through hell. And now Woojin has to wear his face. A million things are racing through his mind, but one massive problem stands out above the rest. He has absolutely zero idea where he is on the game's timeline. The only clue he has is his current mana level, which is honestly useless, because he has no clue how quickly it drains in real life, and he is not joking when he remembers the development phase. His team had play-tested this exact game at least 1,000 times. And out of all those playthroughs, Dekulin managed to survive exactly one time. One, because that is his entire purpose. He is just a mid-tier boss, a shiny stepping stone meant to be crushed by the hero. Woojin stares blankly at the massive pile of documents his half-sister had violently slammed onto his desk just moments ago. That was Uriel von Grahen Uklein, the acting boss of their noble family. a title that should have rightfully belonged to Deculine if it were not for, well, whatever massive scandal the original guy had pulled off. And just when you think this survival game could not get any worse, things are about to heat up. So Deculine and Uriel, definitely not your picture-perfect siblings. Great start. And to make matters worse, Deculine was apparently engaged to someone named Julie. Judging by the pure venom in Uriel's voice when she said her name, Woojin instantly knew some serious drama had gone down between them. He skimmed through the paperwork on his desk and stumbled upon something better, a contract. As it turned out, he was officially employed as a professor at the Imperial University, tasked with teaching basic magic and mana control. Boom, his path was locked in. The fact that he had absolutely no teaching experience didn't matter. Bailing out simply wasn't on the table. But hey, at least it gave him a solid excuse to leave the house and gather some intel on what the heck was going on. Suddenly, before he could even wrap his head around it, a glowing system prompt popped up, giving him his main survival objective: make himself absolutely essential to the game's plot. His very first side mission, go teach a class at the college. The reward was 0.5 store points. It sounded like pennies, but right now he needed every single drop to survive. He also remembered some story paths, where Deculine ended up dead because of Uriel's meddling. Yeah, dodging that bullet sounded like a top priority. Letting out a heavy sigh, he stood up, ready to face this crazy new mission. There was just one tiny issue. He was totally clueless about what to teach. Thankfully, that wasn't a deal breaker. He had the comprehension skill, the single perk he chose right before getting dumped into this fantasy world. As long as he had a little bit of mana, he could instantly master anything he read. Slipping into a sharp formal suit, Woojin couldn't ignore the crazy contrast between this world and his past reality. But honestly, playing the bad guy felt strangely normal. The high-end fashion, the snobby noble vibe. It should have felt suffocating, but honestly, it brought a weird sense of comfort. That was all thanks to Deculine's passive traits, intimidation, dignity, and a killer sense of style. It was almost like the real Deculine was helping him slide right into this new body. Woojin didn't even have to force the act. Being completely stiff and formal used to drain him. But now, it felt effortless. Still, knowing it was just the character's influence left a creepy feeling in his gut. Walking to his very first class, everything just clicked perfectly. He felt like he truly belonged there. Like he was born to be a high-class noble looking down on the peasants. It was a massive leap from Kim Woojin, the total nobody back in South Korea. That guy was just a plain lazy dude who got dumped by his ex and had zero future. But now, stepping into Deculine's shoes, he wanted to embrace the role. If he was trapped in this world, he was going to act like a real top-tier aristocrat. He slid into his ride and man, the inside of this car screamed luxury, totally unlike anything he had ever experienced before. Thinking about expensive cars, his mind drifted to his ex's new boyfriend, a stuck-up rich guy who loved showing off his wheels. But before he got too deep in his feelings, he spotted someone sitting right next to him. It was a young boy who practically jumped in his seat the second he noticed Deculine bowing nervously, before handing over a thick stack of papers. Woojin figured this kid had to be his personal assistant, or maybe a secretary. But when he actually asked to make sure the boy looked absolutely terrified, like Woojin had just said something crazy, it turns out this poor kid had been working for Deculine for 3 whole years. Woojin let out a sigh and scanned the documents, kind of expecting to see some detailed magical theory. Instead, he found a complete script, a word-for-word breakdown of exactly what to say down to the last detail. There was zero chance a guy like Deculine would ever bother writing his own lesson plans. That arrogant noble was way too proud and way too untalented for hard work. Seeing how much crazy effort the kid poured into this, Woojin felt bad and wanted to say something nice. Saying a quick thank you wouldn't kill him, right, so he actually said it. But the reaction was insane. The kid literally froze in shock. His eyes went wide like he just saw a ghost. Even the driver gripped the wheel like the world was ending. Apparently, the original Deculine saying something polite was completely impossible. Suddenly, Woojin felt an awful sharp pain hit his stomach like a truck. It was like his very body was completely rejecting the idea of being nice. The sheer madness of it made him freeze. Was his own body literally punishing him just for giving a compliment? Just what kind of total monster was Deculine? Now that he thought about it, he felt that same gross wave of nausea when leaving the mansion earlier. It was like Deculine's mind was fighting from the inside, desperately trying to steal back control. After a quick drive, they pulled up to the Imperial University, a massive campus packed with chattering, energetic students. Now that he was on the ground, his next goal was basic: track down the specific classroom written in his notes, Rodeo Hall. The moment he stepped inside, he saw that the students were already seated staring at the front with bright, eager eyes. Oddly enough, they actually looked thrilled to be there. Word on the street was that Professor Deculine was an absolute genius at spell interpretation, a rare talent that had once crowned him a childhood prodigy. And then the big moment arrived. Deculine finally stepped into the classroom, his mere presence instantly demanding total silence. His voice was calm but heavy with authority as he introduced himself, Deculane von Grahan Eucline, head professor of the university's magic tower. With the boring introductions out of the way, the class officially kicked off. Right on cue, the female students were completely starstruck. With his striking good looks, noble vibe, and undeniable confidence, it made total sense why they were mesmerized by his every word. However, hidden in the crowd sat one girl who wasn't buying the hype at all. In her eyes, Deculine wasn't some genius, professor, or respected mage. He was a lying thief, the very man who ruined her father. Almost 3 years back, her dad, a hardworking scholar studying spell interpretation, tragically met his end. He had poured literal years of sweat into his research just to have his life's work ripped right out of his hands. Utterly crushed and hopeless, he spiraled into total darkness and ultimately faded away from this world. And the guy who stole everything from him, the so-called genius of spell interpretation, Deculine? After her father was gone, her entire world collapsed. Her childhood home, her family's lands, every single thing she owned was snatched away, leaving her dead broke. But she wasn't about to give up that easily. She made a fierce vow to get payback. Determined to crush the man who stole her dad's legacy, she clawed her way into the prestigious Empire's Royal University, the exact same place where Deculine now paraded around as a professor, while the rest of the class sat there blindly cheering for him. She was ready to drag his dirty secrets into the light. She was going to show the world that his so-called brilliance was just one giant fake. But taking down a guy like him wasn't going to be a walk in the park. She needed to play it smart, stay sharp, and for now, just wait. Back at the podium, Deculine kept rolling through his lecture, diving straight into the core basics of magic. He broke down the 3 main attributes and the 9 distinct types of magic. Attributes acted as the raw fuel of magic, while elements were the building blocks that made up everything around them. The 9 branches covered summoning, destruction, support, enchantment, manipulation, ductility, bewitchment, and harmony. But as the words left his mouth, something wild hit him. Wujin, the normal guy who was now trapped inside Deculine's body, suddenly realized that playing the role of a professor was surprisingly easy. This was literally his first time talking to a room full of students, and he didn't even know the first thing about magical theory. Yet even though he was just reading off a piece of paper, the concepts somehow made total crystal clear sense in his brain. On top of that, Deculine's natural boss-like aura had the whole room completely hypnotized. Even the snobby, noble habits like keeping intense eye contact and dominating the room's vibe felt like an absolute breeze. Who knows, maybe this version of Deculine actually had what it takes to be an amazing teacher. Moving on, the lecture shifted deeper into how mana really worked. The way a person used mana totally depended on where they kept it in their body. Mages usually stored their power right in their heads since it made casting spells a whole lot smoother. Knights, on the flip side, locked their mana away in their hearts, pumping it straight through their veins for explosive power. And then there was the inner core, a rare trick that mixed both internal and external mana, making it the ultimate, most flexible storage method. Bottom line, natural talent was great, but grinding hard was just as important. If you weren't born special, your only shot was to pick one skill and bet your entire life on it. Ironically, Wujin stood there quietly laughing at how incredibly weak Deculine's actual mana level was. Right now, his max capacity sat at a measly 3,500. To put that in plain English, there were mages walking around right now with mana pools blasting past 30,000. It was honestly hilarious that he was standing up here trying to teach magic when in reality he should be sitting in the back row taking notes. Finally, the class started wrapping up. But there was one final sentence on his script that he really didn't want to read out loud. He just knew the original Deculine would have definitely skipped this part. The script literally said, "If any of you students have a question, don't hesitate to ask." For a solid minute, pure silence filled the air. The class looked so insanely focused on the lesson that no one even had a single doubt in their minds. Deculine let out a huge mental sigh of relief. No questions meant zero extra drama for him. But right when he finally relaxed his shoulders, someone stood up. It was her, the one girl who hated his guts. She had a burning question locked and loaded. Just last night, a seriously creepy spell had triggered in the dorms, and people were whispering it was the work of pure evil. But before she could even finish her thought, Deculine's icy glare pinned her down. He coldly called her out for having zero manners. She hadn't even bothered to state her name before speaking up. If she couldn't handle basic classroom respect, then he wasn't about to give her the time of day. Without a second glance, he turned around and walked out. Honestly, he didn't care about etiquette. He was just way too exhausted to deal with her drama. Just wrapping his head around these magic concepts. Right then, the guy was running on totally empty. Just wrapping his head around the lecture notes had sucked 13 mana right out of him. And now she wanted him to break down a spell he had literally never laid eyes on. Yeah, no way that was happening. Meanwhile, the rest of the class was trying to hide their laughs. They were eating up the drama, totally loving watching this girl embarrass herself. Everyone figured she was just trying to show off for the professor, only for it to blow up in her face big time. The poor girl's face was burning from Professor Deculine's harsh words. She was trying so hard to keep it together, Still, she would not back down. She stood her ground, holding out hope that he would actually give her a straight answer. She claimed the magic tower flat out refused to look into it, just sweeping it under the rug as some crazy rumor. But if anyone could figure out what kind of magic they used, she bet Professor Deculin could do it. So taking things into her own hands, she whipped up a spell right on the spot and challenged Deculin to break it down. Backed into a corner, Deculin took a look at the spell. In a flash, it sucked away about 17 mana. She let slip that a bunch of the new girls in her dorm had been trying to crack this exact same spell. But no matter how hard they tried, they hit a total dead end. That was why she came to him. She was just hoping he would give it a quick look. Instead, Deculin immediately called it out as barrier magic. His zero hesitation totally threw her off. He even took it a step further, saying it was a bewitchment-type barrier spell, which meant whoever set it up definitely planned on locking everyone inside the dorm building. With that out of the way, Deculin brushed her off in a heartbeat. He told her to drop it since the mystery was solved and just walked off, leaving her standing there looking like a total joke. Cut to the university's Magic Tower cafeteria. That very same girl was now stress-eating, shoving food into her face without caring who saw her. Her name was Ephraim, and the whole reason she called Deculin out in the first place was to prove to everyone that his supposedly genius spell analysis skills were totally fake. But instead of putting him in his place, she ended up playing the clown. The embarrassment was literally eating her alive. Even now, she just could not accept that Deculin actually knew his stuff. After all, bewitchment magic was insanely hard to pull off. Most spells need exact parameters to work, but Deculin just casually slapped the bewitchment label on it without naming a single one. That alone told her he was full of it, because the spell she showed him was not just some random doodle. It was a perfect copy of the creepy magic circle someone drew on the dorm master's door just last night. At first, seeing that weird spell freaked everyone out, but it quickly became the hot new study topic for all the freshmen. Right from the start, she was dead set on the idea that Deculin was just a big phony, spitting out big words to sound cool. But suddenly, one of her friends came running over totally out of breath and super hyped. She blurted out that the magic circle on the dorm door was finally cracked. And would you look at that, it really was a barrier spell exactly like Deculin said. After a bunch of group research, they all landed on the exact same answer, meaning Deculin was spot on the entire time. Ephraim just sat there frozen and totally mind-blown. No freaking way. She straight up refused to believe it was actually barrier magic. Worse than that, it made her sick just thinking about admitting Deculin was actually a true master at reading spells. Meanwhile, her friend was totally fangirling, hyping Professor Deculin up to the moon and non-stop talking about how amazing he was. Finally, after getting all that fangirl energy out of her system, her friend headed out. But before she left, she actually thanked Ephraim for being brave enough to test the professor since literally nobody else had the guts to do it. Even with all that, Ephraim was not buying it. There was zero chance Deculin got the right answer on purpose. It had to be a stupid lucky guess. And what ticked her off the most was that instead of outing him as a fake, she ended up making him look like a total genius. Now the whole school thought Deculin was this top-tier professor. Super annoyed, she started flipping through a file filled with Deculin's past achievements, dead set on figuring out her new enemy. Like the old saying goes, if you know your enemy and know yourself, you will never lose a battle. If she had to put up with that jerk every single day, fine. She was going to tear down his fake image until his reputation was completely trashed. Now let us jump back to our main guy, or should I say our favorite villain. As he walked away, he was secretly sweating bullets over what just went down in class. The second his eyes locked onto her spell, his automatic analysis skill kicked in. Just one quick look at that crazy complex magic circle with all its messy lines was enough to completely dry up every single drop of mana he had left in the tank. But the part that really drove him crazy, even after burning through all that mana, he still had no clue what the spell actually did, and he probably would not even if his mana pool was twice as big. Even with his new body, it didn't matter. The core logic behind it all was still totally over his head. Right now, he was just glad things went his way. But the second he took a step forward, his path was cut off by a striking woman. She wore shining white armor matching her pale hair and piercing bright eyes. He knew exactly who she was. Deculin recognized her in a heartbeat. Not just because she was famous in this world, but because he literally helped create this game. This was Julie Von Dea Freyden, his official fiancée and a major character, fated to become the absolute peak of all knights. He definitely didn't plan on bumping into her this soon, but there was no backing out now. Keeping his cool, he threw her a casual greeting, acting like everything was perfectly fine. But Julie wasn't buying it for a second. Her face went cold. She demanded to know how he could just brush off the massive promise they made 1 week ago. The problem, Woojin, who was now living as Deculin, had absolutely zero idea what she was talking about. And since he wasn't about to deal with messy drama on day one, he decided to just play dumb. Keeping his poker face, he tried to sidestep past her, completely brushing off the so-called promise by claiming it slipped his mind. Yeah, Julie wasn't letting that slide. She instantly stepped right back into his personal space, cutting him off. There was no way she was letting him run away like last time, staring down her fierce, unmoving glare. Deculin quickly realized he wasn't getting out of this without giving her something. So he doubled down on the memory loss act, blaming his recent high fever. He even had the nerve to ask her to remind him what the promise actually was. Cue the flashback to exactly 1 week ago. Julie had sworn a solemn oath to him, if he could just be honest with himself. If he dropped the arrogant act and finally admitted his mistakes to the world, she promised she would stand by his side no matter what, even if the whole world burned down around them. Snapping back to the present, Julie's eyes were glistening with unshed tears. You could see the heavy doubt in her eyes, terrified that she had put her faith in a complete liar. Defeated, she finally stepped aside, giving him an opening to leave. And Deculin, he didn't even give her a second glance. No checking in, no comforting words. He just coldly walked away. And honestly, that ticked Julie off more than anything. She swallowed her anger, but let's be real, their engagement was never a love story. It was strictly a business deal, perfectly crafted to boost both of their families' power. Deculin, the star mage, and Julie, the genius knight. This marriage was basically a political alliance meant to merge two massive noble houses, the Euclines and the Freydens, two giant powerhouses joining forces. Nobody batted an eye at the time because on paper they looked like the ultimate power couple. But reality hit hard. As time went on, the ugly truth leaked out. Deculin's so-called magical talent, it was totally fake. He was nowhere near the genius everyone thought he was. He might have been living in denial, but the facts were right there. The guy scammed everyone. He hyped himself up as a master of spell analysis and even managed to finesse his way into a professor gig. But that house of cards eventually collapsed. The messy headlines spread everywhere like wildfire, exposing the Magic Tower's youngest star professor as a total fraud on a downward spiral. Ever since then, Deculin hadn't achieved a single impressive thing. Even with all that drama, the Eucline and Freyden families threw crazy money and power at the problem just to bury the scandal. Julie knew exactly why. Neither side wanted to be the laughingstock of high society. They were doing massive damage control. But Julie wasn't built like that. Sure, she agreed to marry a guy she didn't even like for duty's sake, but drawing the line at straight-up lies, that went against every single code of honor she had as a knight. What really stung, though, was that Deculin looked her in the eye and swore he would change. He promised to start living an honest life. But looking at him now, she realized that was just another load of pure garbage. Real quick, before we keep going, you need to understand just how massive the Imperial University and the Magic Tower actually are in this world. The Imperial University is basically the Ivy League of this game. It's the absolute peak of education, and out of all its programs, the Magic Department is the undisputed king. To put it in real-world terms, getting into the Magic Department is harder than getting into Harvard Med, while the Magic Tower is basically like the world's most elite top-secret research lab. It's where the brightest minds create absolute magic. Stepping onto the campus, Woojin just soaks in the crazy, insane scale of the place, his eyes scanning over massive, flawless grounds that scream pure money and prestige. The perfectly manicured gardens and stone walkways look like they were ripped straight out of an elite private American college. Every single detail was painfully handcrafted, and he knows it. Mostly because he was one of the devs who sweat blood designing this exact aesthetic. He and his crew had burned the midnight oil building this game from the ground up. But instead of just kicking back and enjoying the scenery, he had one massive regret. He seriously wished he'd woken up in literally anyone else's body. Right as that thought hits him, the hairs on his neck stand up. He's being followed. He whips around to face his stalker, only to smack right into them. The poor guy on the receiving end, it's just his assistant Alan fumbling a giant pile of paperwork. For a split second, Deculin's fight-or-flight kicks in, bracing for an ambush. But the moment he sees Alan's familiar face, he instantly drops his guard. A little while later, back in the office, Alan finally hands over those super important files. It turns out to be the sponsorship list for this year's rookie mages. Kind of like real-world colleges. The Magic Tower runs on grant money. The professor's back, the top-tier newbies who show real promise. While skimming the profiles, one specific name stops Deculin dead in his tracks. It's literally glowing in a bright golden light on the page. He knows right away this is his special skill kicking in. You see, Deculin has a trait called Wealthy Magnate. Basically, it gives him a crazy good radar for making money. The more facts he gathers, the sharper his business sense gets. Toss in his sharp eyesight, a perk that lets him visually read hidden stats, mana levels, and all the juicy details. And the math is pretty simple. Any name glowing gold like this is a walking gold mine, just waiting to be cashed in. And out of all the rookies on the list, one shines the absolute brightest. Ephraim Luna. The irony hits him like a freight train. The one girl mathematically guaranteed to bring him absolute wealth is the exact same girl plotting his total downfall. You can't make this stuff up. Deculin knows exactly who she is. She's a main character in the original game. According to the lore, she absolutely hates his guts. And honestly, fair enough. Because of him, her dad is dead. Skimming further down the page, he notices a glaring blank spot. Unlike the others, Ephraim has zero sponsors. Nobody wants to back her. When he asks Alan why, the answer makes perfect sense. The other professors are playing it safe. Nobody wants to get on Deculin's bad side by funding his future nemesis. Still, you have to respect her hustle. She never even went to the academy. She taught herself magic from scratch, and her raw talent is off the charts. The girl's potential is sky high. But that doesn't change reality. She wants him gone. Because in her eyes, he's the villain who ruined her family. And Woojin knows exactly how this script ends. If he lets the plot play out, he's going to die just like the game. It's practically set in stone. A blade, some poison, a knife in the dark, or getting blown to bits. The flavor changes, but the death screen is always the same. All thanks to a lovely little curse he carries called Villain's Fate. A passive skill that guarantees the whole world wants his head on a spike. The silver lining: if an attack doesn't kill him, he levels up from it. But dying really isn't on his to-do list today, not in this world and definitely not in this body. To make it out alive, he has to break character. He needs to do things the real Deculin never would. And without missing a beat, he signs Ephraim's paper. He hands the file back to Alan, telling him to submit it right away. He also rattles off a quick reading list, asking for books. He desperately needs to plan his survival. Now alone in his office, Deculin sinks into his chair. One thing is crystal clear: cash is king. If he gets rich enough, he can buy his way out of most of his death flags. Backing a genius mage is a solid start, but it's just a band-aid. There are dozens of killers waiting in the dark, looking for the perfect moment to strike. To survive this nightmare, he needs ridiculous amounts of money and raw power, enough to steamroll anyone who tries him. But as Woojin plots his rise to the top, a harsh truth hits him. Deculin's actual magic skills are incredibly mid. If he doesn't get stronger fast, he is completely dead meat. Luckily, he has an ace up his sleeve: his passive skills. The original Deculin loved bragging about mastering all 4 elements, but honestly, his real talent is strictly in earth and fire. And when you mix those two with metal, you get something totally broken. His signature move, Midas Touch. By burning a little mana, he can instantly awaken an item's hidden power. Plus, his knack for controlling metal lets him summon flying razor-sharp blades. But let's be real, those cool floating swords are basically just high-level telekinesis. The funny thing is, in this universe, telekinesis is a total mystery. Nobody understands it and nobody uses it. Woojin smiles. He knows that if he can just master the basics of moving objects with his mind, even without crazy raw power, he could level the playing field by bending metal to his absolute will. But first he had to master the basics. Not wasting a single second, he fired up his comprehension skill, instantly soaking up every single concept and spell about basic telekinesis right out of the book. A few moments later, fully loaded with this fresh knowledge, he locked his eyes on a nearby pen. A subtle surge of energy rushed through his veins, and just like that, the pen hovered in midair. Thanks to his Midas Touch ability, he could use telekinesis like it was nothing, without uttering a single word. This was just the bare bones of the skill, but he could already feel how insane the potential was. Just thinking about unlocking advanced telekinesis gave him a rush. Once he hit that next level, there was no telling what kind of crazy stuff he could pull off. His next goal was way bolder, carving a literal magic circle directly into his own flesh. In this world, bigger magic circles meant bigger power. And Deculin, he was about to take that rule to the absolute limit, by tattooing them across his entire body. But before that, he had to map out his own anatomy down to the smallest detail. Using his comprehension skill again, he tuned into everything: his brain, his beating heart, every muscle, and his deepest inner core. Then the real test began. The second the magic circle started burning into his skin, a blinding white-hot agony exploded. It was completely off the charts. It felt like his bones were being crushed to dust, like his muscles were violently tearing apart from the inside out. But through all that living hell, Deculin did not even flinch. He swallowed every scream, taking the brutal pain with the perfect icy composure of a true noble. But when the smoke cleared, it was a bust. His mana reserves were just too pathetically low, scraping by at barely one single point. The magic circle had only made it onto his shoulder, moving at this painfully slow pace. It was going to take a full 2 weeks to cover his whole body. Still, he did not care. This was just the warm-up. Flash forward 1 month after Deculin's seminar. The highly anticipated first day of class at the university's magic tower was finally here. Out in an isolated training yard, the freshmen were buzzing with hype, totally pumped for their very first lesson. But the only thing waiting for them was a note on a board from their professor. It laid out a simple rule before the real teaching kicked off. The students had to show what they were made of right here in a zone totally packed with raw elemental energy. The shocker: the professor had totally ditched them, leaving them to fend for themselves. Confused whispers quickly rippled through the crowd of students. But nobody was more ticked off about this than Ephraim. Totally annoyed, she was whispering angry complaints to herself, wondering why on earth their teacher would just bail on them like that. But right in the middle of her rant, Some girl intentionally shoved past her, hitting her right in the shoulder. Already in a terrible mood, Ephraim whipped around, fully ready to bite the head off whoever had the nerve to mess with her. But the second her eyes locked onto the girl's face, all that fiery anger instantly melted into total shock. Standing right there in front of her was none other than Sylvia von Josephine Iliade. They locked eyes for a split second, the tension between them thick enough to cut with a knife. But Sylvia, she didn't care at all. She just glided right by, like Ephraim was completely invisible. Even as Ephraim tried to focus back on the magic task, she just could not shake off that run-in. She knew for a fact that girl belonged to House Iliad. 10 years ago, the Iliad family was so terrified of Ephraim's crazy potential that they literally surrounded her family's estate with an armed force, threatening them to bow down. And yet, here Sylvia was, acting like she didn't even know Ephraim's name. It just did not add up. Deep in her own head, she completely missed the sudden shift in the air. The delicate magic structure she was building started to shake, falling apart right in front of her. A massive heavy pressure suddenly crushed the entire room, giving her massive goosebumps. It honestly felt like her own mana was being violently drained, pulled towards something insanely powerful. She snapped her head toward the source of the chaos, and of course, it was Sylvia. The blonde genius had just summoned a gigantic magic construct, something so incredibly massive that it made Ephraim's work look like a speck of dust. Ephraim's blood boiled in a heartbeat. The crazy shockwaves coming off Sylvia's spell had totally wiped out everything she was working on. Pure rage bubbled up in her chest. But Sylvia, cold as ice as usual. She just kept doing her thing, treating Ephraim like she was nothing but thin air. And that, more than the ruined spell, absolutely enraged her. The sheer nerve, the absolute arrogance of this girl, deciding she wasn't going to just take it. Ephraim decided to poke the bear. She started throwing verbal punches, mocking Sylvia's magic, saying whatever she could to finally get a rise out of her. They were bitter rivals after all. Sylvia had spent years making her life miserable, trying to break her spirit, and push her out of the magic world entirely, just so she could feel superior. And now she was playing dumb, acting like she didn't even know her. Finally, Sylvia shot back, though her voice was still maddeningly flat. She flat out said she didn't remember Ephraim at all, but she did casually mention hearing about some reckless, pathetic noble who had passed away. The exact second those words dropped, the whole world seemed to stop spinning for Ephraim. That was a direct, dirty shot at her late father. Ephraim saw nothing but red as pure, uncontrollable fury exploded from inside her. Without hesitating, she jumped high, her fist glowing with raw magic. She threw a massive angry punch right at her rival. Sylvia barely had a second to react. A glowing shield popped up just in time, but Sylvia's shaking eyes showed she was not sure it would hold. Boom! The two spells slammed together with a deafening crash, blowing crazy winds right into the crowd of students. The crazy shockwave knocked kids off their feet, leaving them groaning from the heavy impact. When the smoke cleared, Ephraim was the winner, grabbing Sylvia right by the head. She screamed in pure anger, how dare this girl trash-talk her dad. The disrespect made her sick to her stomach. But right as she was about to lose it, something weird caught her attention. A creepy dark glowing orb started forming right where their magic had crashed together. Then the screaming started. Students lost their minds as the air around them started twisting and glitching out like crazy. Ephraim froze. It was a black hole. Their magic had literally ripped a hole in space and it was sucking up everything nearby. The panic got way worse when they realized the truth. If that thing blew up, sharp pieces of metal would shoot through the crowd like bullets. It would be an absolute bloodbath. Grinding her teeth, Ephraim pushed all her magic to hold it back, her whole body shaking from the heavy pressure. But suddenly, dead silence. The heavy crushing feeling completely disappeared in a flash. It was like the black hole just gave up. Ephraim slowly opened her eyes, only to find a tall man standing right in front of them. It was their teacher, Professor Deculin. Just looking at him made everyone freeze in fear, but what he just did totally blew their minds. Without breaking a sweat, Deculin had frozen all the flying metal pieces using ice magic in less than a second. And if that was not crazy enough, he then used his mind to float the sharp ice pieces around like a beautiful deadly dance. The whole thing was just stunning to watch. It truly showed off how beautiful magic could really be. Even a talent like Ephraim could not look away. She was totally hooked by how smooth and perfect his skills were. With the danger gone, Deculin finally opened his mouth. His cold, bossy voice cut right through the quiet room. He told them class was over. But when his scary eyes locked onto Sylvia and Ephraim, the mood got super tense all over again. He did not even have to explain it. The message was loud and clear. Everybody goes home except for the two girls who caused this giant mess. As the other kids ran off, giving her looks of pure pity, Ephraim just stood there totally frozen. Her stomach dropped and her face showed it all. She was completely doomed. Cut to the next scene. The vibe inside the meeting room is thick and heavy. Deculin sat perfectly still, waiting for the other teachers to show up. Professor Relin from Spirit Studies and Professor Retlin from Support Studies walked in, and sitting right next to him was Adrian, the top boss of the whole school. Once everyone took their seats, the big boss turned her focus to the main problem of the day. That crazy student who actually dared to beat up a rich noble from the famous Iliad family Ephraim. Sitting right in the middle of this scary room, the teachers just looked at her like she was a piece of trash. She was the exact type of kid the school would kick out in a heartbeat, the nasty way they stared at her. Judging her just because she was broke made it super obvious how this trial was going to end. If Deculin had not stepped in earlier, things would have ended in disaster. The other teachers were totally amazed by his magic, but he already knew this whole trial was totally rigged. The rich girl from a powerful family would get to play the poor victim. Meanwhile, Ephraim, the broke commoner, was going to take all the blame as the bad guy. The ending was already decided before it even started. But honestly, Deculin was not about to let that happen on his watch. Because from day one, something about this girl had totally caught his eye. This weird red energy was leaking out of her body, almost like she was carrying a dark curse. And for a guy like him who was literally doomed to be the villain of the story, that red glow meant nothing but pure danger. It was like the universe, putting a massive target on his back. If he did not flip the script right here and now, this girl's fate was going to drag him straight to an early grave. The trial finally kicked off, and Professor Relin was the first to start barking. His voice was super harsh, yelling at Ephraim for acting like a wild animal. He blamed her for putting everyone's lives at risk over a stupid fight. He kept reminding her that if Deculin had not saved the day, kids would have literally died. Ephraim looked crushed, but she held her ground. She completely refused to explain why she attacked. Keeping her mouth shut made her look super stubborn, like she was just spitting in the faces of the teachers in the room. But honestly, all she cared about was hiding her real plan, especially from the exact man she wanted to destroy. Sylvia's nasty words from earlier kept playing on loop in her head. But no matter how mad she was, she could not let her target figure out what she was up to. Too bad, her silence was just making the teachers even more furious. Relin just wouldn't drop it. With a nasty smirk, he openly mocked her, asking if she was just deeply insecure. He hammered home the massive gap between rich nobles and everyday commoners just to make her hurt even more. Then it was Sylvia's turn. The blonde girl kept a totally straight face, acting like the whole drama was no big deal. She claimed she ruined Ephraim's project completely by accident, playing the whole thing off as a simple mix-up. Just like that, she painted herself as the sweet victim, which made Ephraim look completely crazy for lashing out. The teachers immediately jumped on Ephraim, scolding her for having a terrible temper. And Relin, he pushed things even further. He flat out demanded they kick her out of school. To him, there was zero reason to keep a student who couldn't even follow basic rules. Ephraim just sat there feeling totally isolated. Nobody stepped up to defend her. To the teachers, she was already guilty. Every single insult and angry shout was fired right at her. And the worst part, she couldn't even say a word to defend herself. Since her dad passed away, she had absolutely nobody in her corner. She just sat there completely powerless, taking all their harsh judgment. Feeling totally desperate, she glanced over at Deculin. Deep down, she blamed him for all of this. But it didn't change reality. Finally, Adrian spoke up, seeing that all the teachers were on the exact same page. But right before she ended the meeting, she looked at Deculin and asked what he thought. And that is when things got crazy. Ephraim tensed up, waiting for him to ruin her life for good. Getting kicked out felt 100% certain, but to her total shock, Deculin suddenly turned his target onto Sylvia. His cold voice echoed in the room as he declared that Sylvia was just as guilty. That single sentence left both girls completely speechless. Without pausing, he kept pushing, asking why Sylvia, with all her amazing noble skills, did absolutely nothing to stop the fight. A proud member of the famous Iliad family should have handled that little scuffle with zero effort. So, why did she let things get out of hand? Sylvia was totally stunned. She dropped her head, feeling completely embarrassed. After a few seconds, she finally told the truth. She purposely chose not to block Ephraim's magic, just so the girl would get punished. Meanwhile, the silver-haired girl looked like her brain was completely short-circuiting. She could not believe that Deculin, the guy she hated the most, just took her side. It made zero sense. Why would he actually try to save her? Relin, refusing to back down, yelled out that Sylvia was still the real victim here. Even if Sylvia messed up, it was all still Ephraim's fault. But Deculin was not finished. With that same icy calmness, he fired back, saying he was the one who actually failed. If his classes were so useless that students fought when he wasn't there, then he should be the one taking the punishment. That completely shut Relin down. The old guy panicked, struggling to find a single thing to say back. Ephraim just sat there totally amazed by how crazy this all was. Deculin just completely destroyed another teacher, all to keep her safe. It was crazy, just straight up insane. But it was happening right in front of her. Adrian had heard enough and made her choice. She didn't think this was a huge deal anymore. Kids fight, sometimes it is totally normal for their age. So she ended the whole meeting right there, announcing that nobody was getting punished. The two girls were free to go. Ephraim was left totally lost. She was so ready to get kicked out, knowing Deculin wanted to ruin her life. but instead, she got out without a single scratch. None of this made any sense, not even a little. Later on, Alan just had to praise Dekulin for his genius, moves totally amazed by how he handled everything. But our guy wasn't paying attention to him. He was looking at Ephraim, who had just called his name. She looked super nervous, but she forced herself to ask the one question driving her crazy. She had kept this inside forever, wondering if he knew the name Luna. Did he even remember her dad, the man Dekulin tortured so badly? The guy who suffered so much that he took his own life just to make it stop. That painful memory crushed her heart. But honestly, Dekulin was always 10 steps ahead, and he fully expected her to ask this. He knew she would confront him sooner or later. Ephraim stared right at him, needing to know the truth. Would he lie just to protect his image? Would he dodge the question entirely, or even worse? What if he didn't even remember hurting her dad? That terrible thought made her sick to her stomach. If he really forgot, that would just break her completely. But what Dekulin said next totally shocked her. Without even blinking, he told her that living in the past would only hold her back and she needed to just let those old painful memories go. Without another word, he turned his back and walked off, leaving Ephraim frozen in her tracks. But right then, it all made sense. He definitely knew about her dad. There was no other reason he would go out of his way to save her like that. Was he feeling guilty? Was this his twisted way of making up for the past? She honestly couldn't tell. But if he was just taking pity on her, whatever, she would take it. At the very least, that scumbag professor hadn't completely forgotten his own sins. And as long as he remembered what he did, she could deal with it. With that settled, the whole mess with Ephraim finally came to an end, scoring Dekulin an unexpected bonus of 2 points to dodge his own death flags. Cutting to the next scene, Sylvia breaks down the whole situation to her dad, Glythian, the boss of the Iliad family and a high-tier Esprit mage. Glythian is absolutely convinced that the gifted Ephraim Luna blew her chance to shine as a top mage almost 10 years ago during their magic aptitude test. That same test was actually the very first time Sylvia and Ephraim ever crossed paths. During the exam, the mana reader went absolutely crazy around them. It showed that both girls had insane off-the-charts talent, proving they both had what it takes to become future archmages. But back then, neither kid had a clue how massive that deal actually was. They just stared at each other with blank faces, totally lost by the massive weight and hype being dumped on their shoulders. To give you some context, archmages are ridiculously powerful, so strong, that not even emperors dare to mess with them. Only a tiny handful of people ever hit that peak, and the ones who make it go down in history forever. The golden rule is that every generation gets exactly 3 archmages, no matter their magic type, and that rule is set in stone. The crazy part, right now, aside from Demicon, 2 of those epic seats are wide open. Adrian is already locked in as a top pick for one of those spots, leaving just one single chair left up for grabs. That was the exact moment the Iliad and Luna families turned into bitter rivals. They stood on opposite sides of the battlefield, fighting tooth and nail for that last spot. Of course, Glythian is obsessed with making sure Sylvia takes that crown no matter the price. He was so ruthless about it that he even threatened Ephraim's dad and blocked him from getting his own daughter into the Magic Academy. Sylvia gets this harsh reality better than anyone else. The only reason her family crushed the Lunas so badly was to pave the way for her to take that throne. They needed her to become an archmage no matter who got hurt along the way. But honestly, it wasn't just her family pushing for it. It was Sylvia's own dream too. It was the exact future she was meant to have. And that is exactly why Ephraim's words hit her so hard back in the day. But in the end, she just brushes the whole thing off as a stroke of bad luck. While Glythian doesn't really see Ephraim as a real threat, he is definitely sweating over Professor Dekulin. To him, Dekulin is just a normal guy who peaked early as a genius, which makes him a total wildcard and super hard to read. Because of that, no one knows if he is suddenly going to snap out of his slump, level up, and become a massive threat out of nowhere. Sylvia isn't shocked by this at all. She felt how dangerous he was the very second he saw right through her trap. When that huge blast went off, Sylvia really did wipe out Ephraim's mana. But she had also set up a sneaky little trap of her own in the shadows. Her master plan was to force a brutal clash between their spells and trigger the void. If she pulled it off, the explosion would have been a total disaster, making Ephraim look guilty as hell. The whole reason Dekulin shot that magic flare was because he read her like a book from second one, even though she tried her absolute hardest to stay under the radar. Even after figuring out the whole messy truth, he didn't rat either of them out. Instead, he tossed them a lifeline, a third choice, that kept them both out of the fire. His strict warning was basically an ultimatum play along with his fake story, if they wanted to walk away in one piece. Thinking about it now, Sylvia knows. She totally slept on how good he really was. But more than that, this whole crazy event has her questioning who Dekulin really is behind the mask. A few days roll by and the camera cuts to Dekulin's massive, ultra-luxurious mansion. This guy is straight up living like Bruce Wayne, looking sharp as ever with a personal driver opening doors for him. Sitting back, Dekulin thinks over his choice to bail out Ephraim when things got intense. To him, it was an absolute no-brainer. By stepping in, he managed to dodge one of his inevitable death flags and even racked up some extra points for his system store. Personally, though, he didn't expect Ephraim to expose her true feelings that fast during their very first run-in. But even then, he knew right away that she hated his guts from day one. And even though saving her has now officially put him on Sylvia's hit list too, he still thinks he played his best hand, pushing all that drama to the side. Deculin really isn't thrilled about having to show his face at these high society parties right now. He isn't about to miss out on any chance to rack up store points. He just got a brand new side quest after all, telling him to show up at the Flower of the New Year gala. The payout, another half point of shop currency. Right now, he still needs at least 5 points just to unlock the store. Because of this, his main goal is to bump into the major players of the story whenever he can. As soon as he steps into the venue, people treat Deculin like absolute royalty. The room is packed with high society snobs, flashy decorations, and fake rich people laughs. Sweeping his gaze across the room, he spots a few big-name characters he could easily chat up. But one guy catches his eye more than the rest. It is Ihelm, a character that Kim Woojin personally created back in the real world. Spotting him makes Deculin realize that dragging himself to this party was totally worth it. Too bad, his luck doesn't last. Before he can make a move, some old aristocrat spots him, and practically shouts about how thrilled he is to meet the famous Professor Deculin. That loud greeting instantly turns every head in the room. Dozens of eyes lock onto him in a split second, and the whole hall starts buzzing with whispers about him being there. Whatever cool vibe Deculin walked in with is instantly crushed under the weight of all this unwanted attention. Then he catches someone dropping the name Sir Ganesha. The second that name hits his ears, his whole focus shifts. He knows exactly what a big deal she is, and missing the chance to talk to her would be a massive blunder. He intensely scans the sea of faces trying to find her, but she is completely nowhere to be seen. Little does he know the terrifying adventurer is actually chilling right behind him. At this stage in the plot, Ganesha ranks as the 5th toughest fighter we have seen so far. Finally, Deculin catches sight of her up on a balcony. The red-haired woman is just silently watching the party unfold below. Spotting his target at last, he quickly picks up his pace to go meet her. But sadly, right before he can reach Ganesha, Ihelm pops up and starts chatting him up at the absolute worst time. Ihelm is an exclusive wizard for the royal court, holding the rank of monarch, which puts him on the exact same level as Deculin. The second they lock eyes, Ihelm starts throwing shade. He plays dumb, acting shocked that the brilliant Professor Deculin even remembers him before twisting the topic toward Deculin's latest research. Without missing a beat, he drags up some pretty nasty rumors. He claims that Deculin's work has been completely dead in the water for the past 3 years. This is making a lot of folks wonder if his so-called genius and skills are actually as amazing as the hype suggests. And this guy isn't just gossiping in the shadows, he is spitting all of this right to his face. All this bad blood comes from their old days. Ihelm and Deculin went to college together and used to be pretty tight. But once Deculin grabbed the head professor spot, Ihelm's jealousy slowly turned into pure hateful spite. The old Deculin would have instantly blown a fuse over such obvious bait, but our guy stays as cool as ice. He refuses to snap back and honestly does not see a point in fighting. As far as he cares, those nasty rumors are pretty much the truth anyway. But then his focus snaps somewhere else. His heart drops. Ganesha vanished. His single biggest reason for even coming here is going up in smoke thanks to this annoying chatterbox who just won't shut up. Finally, out of patience, Deculin brushes right past Ihelm, dropping a snarky insult, calling him a piece of moldy cheese. That random jab catches Ihelm totally off guard, leaving him looking dumbfounded. Refusing to waste even one more second on that guy, Deculin goes right back to hunting down Ganesha. He is super anxious she might ditch the party before they can actually talk. Right now, his whole master plan is crumbling. Him vanishing out of nowhere also leaves half the room confused about where the star guest ran off to. Honestly, Deculin wanted to do way more damage than just a cheese insult, but all those spying eyes held him back. Then completely out of the blue, a voice calls out to him. He jumps. It is Ganesha standing right next to him. With a playful look, she asks if he was looking for her, even though Deculin basically just bumped into her. While running away from the party's annoying crowd, her casual vibe makes him think they have definitely crossed paths before. When he tries to play it cool and says he just got lost, the red-haired fighter just laughs it off. She sees right through his lame excuse and knows he was hunting for her. Then Ganesha actually says sorry for messing things up on their last mission together, asking him to just drop it. Thanks to that quick chat, it totally confirms that these two have some serious history from old jobs. She apologizes one more time for failing to help him recruit a gifted kid. Turns out she let her own feelings get in the way and blew the whole mission. Ganesha straight up refuses to hand the kid over. Naturally, our guy is itching to know what this whole conversation is really about. And suddenly, the original Deculin's shady plan clicks. That jerk wanted to use a child prodigy to do all the heavy lifting while he took all the glory. Out of nowhere, Ganesha drops a heavy question. With a piercing look, she asks just how long he plans on keeping up this fake act and staying the way he is. Her careful wording hits him hard, forcing him to pause and think. Honestly, before our main character took over this body, the real Deculane was an absolute menace. He lashed out, made countless enemies, and completely destroyed any trust he had left, literally stepping on others just to build his own reputation. But right here, right now, our new Deculane draws a line in the sand, declaring he is going to live completely differently. Ganesha blinks, caught totally off guard. She was bracing herself for him to absolutely blow up and attack her for stepping out of line during the mission. Meanwhile, Kim Woo-jin, the guy driving Deculane's body, is sweating bullets. He can barely believe the original professor was actually insane enough to pick a fight with one of the most overpowered characters in the entire world. Talk about having a death wish. Sure, he does not know the full history between the old Deculane and Ganesha, but he knows one thing for sure. This woman could wipe him off the face of the earth without breaking a sweat. I mean, her two main traits are literally invincible body and martial arts master. With stats like that, you just know she is an absolute beast in a fight. She is one of the rare adventurers who maxed out her physical limits. Thankfully, because our boy Woojin is at the wheel, he skipped the whole part about hiring hidden blades to take her out. Because if he had actually tried that stunt, Ganesha's life would have genuinely been on the line. While he is lost in thought, Ganesha narrows her eyes, wondering if he bumped his head or ate something funky for breakfast. His whole vibe is just completely off. Having checked all his boxes for the day, Deculane turns on his heel to cut the chat short. Ganesha watches him walk away totally stunned, wondering if he is actually serious about letting her walk free. Glancing back over his shoulder, the ice-cold professor just scoffs, saying a petty move like that is way beneath him. The absolute flex leaves her standing there, jaw dropped. Making his way down the hall, Deculane realizes he could easily pull rank and use his family's massive influence to crush the adventurer through the guild. But playing that card would just paint a giant target on his own back. Suddenly, a system alert pops up, freezing him in his tracks. He just dodged a fatal encounter. My guy was definitely not planning to meet his maker tonight. That notification proves that his little chat with Ganesha was a literal game of Russian roulette. He is just at a fancy networking party and the Grim Reaper is already hovering over his shoulder. Give the man a break. The camera pans over to Rayleigh, an adventurer tied to Julie. The gifted knight is sitting there totally zoning out, with a bitter scowl on her face. Catching onto her heavy mood, Rayleigh instantly knows what is ruining her friend's night, so she leans in and casually asks how things are going with her fiancé. The second that word drops, Julie visibly tenses up. Rayleigh name drops Professor Deculane, pointing out the nasty rumors floating around, flashing back to his arrogant smirk during their last meetup. Julie lets out an angry sigh. She completely drops her guard, blurting out that their relationship is an absolute dumpster fire right now. Speak of the devil, the main man himself strides toward the exit. He locks eyes with her for a split second but keeps right on walking. For a guy who usually eats up the spotlight at these parties, giving his own fiancée the cold shoulder instantly sets the crowd buzzing. Whispers break out across the room, fueling the fire that their engagement is falling apart. Deculane, dipping out of the party way before schedule, leaves a trail of question marks behind him. Everybody reaches the exact same conclusion. He and Julie just had a massive, nasty breakup. But honestly, not even the creator of the game, Kim Woo-jin, saw this drama coming. Fast forward exactly 7 days since that awkward high society bash. Our guy has been grinding in the shadows, flexing some serious gains as he effortlessly knocks out a set of pull-ups. On top of frying his brain with heavy studying and telekinesis drills, he threw intense physical conditioning into the mix, just to build up his stamina. Why? Because the dude literally almost flatlined after pushing a wildly dangerous magic experiment. Just a couple of nights ago, he was collapsed on the cold floor, coughing up blood and clinging to dear life. Any average wizard would be 6 feet under by now. He only pulled through because of his rare Iron Man trait. Seriously, the guy is basically Tony Stark, on a desperate mission to level up. Knowing he is up against massive threats, he tried to fuse firebending skills straight into his telekinesis. He figured it would make his metal manipulation completely overpowered. The grand plan was to evolve his base magic and skip the years of grinding required to learn new spells. The only problem, this shortcut was incredibly suicidal, even by his crazy standards. Feeling his body nearly tear itself apart was the wake-up call he needed to finally start treating his physical health seriously. That terrifying brush with death birthed his new gym routine. Dripping with sweat after his final set, our boy is looking absolutely shredded like a literal fitness model. With his morning pump officially out of the way, it is time to hit the classroom. Cut to Deculane's office, where Alan walks in holding a letter from the Magic Tower. It is from a major VIP, so Deculane does not waste any time tearing it open. Scanning the page, his eyes lock onto some bad news. An official audit of his research is scheduled to happen in 6 months. For now, they just need him to get all his paperwork in order and hand it over before the deadline. Of course, this is a massive headache. Taking way too long on his project has finally put him under the microscope. Things are getting pretty risky, since his entire survival in this game is tied to his job as head professor. He really has to keep that title. The second he gets fired, his one chance of going back to the real world goes up in smoke. Knowing what is on the line, he heads down to his lab to find something, anything to save his skin. Stepping inside, he is hit with a total disaster zone. The lab looks like a tornado just ripped through it. Junk is thrown everywhere, covered in thick layers of dust from months of zero cleaning. Honestly, if the old Deculin had actually been working in here, there is no way he would have let it get this trashy. Looking around, one super dirty corner grabs his eye. It just looks a little too messy, almost unnatural. It looks exactly like somebody purposely buried a secret under all that junk. Curious, he decides to dig into it. Lucky for him, he has telekinesis, so he does not even have to get his hands dirty. Floating the trash out of the way, he spots a hidden notebook and flips it open. It turns out the original owner locked his life's work behind a magical code, so nobody could steal it, but that is no problem for him. Using his special understanding skill, he cracks the code like it is nothing. The second the lock breaks, a blinding gold light shoots out of the pages, proving just how incredibly important this data is. Thanks to his wealthy background and super sharp eyes, he instantly knows he just found something priceless. But there is a catch. The research is a total mess with tons of ripped out pages and half-written notes. Even with all the missing pieces, the book keeps glowing, showing that this unfinished project is still a huge deal. Digging deeper into the lab, he stumbles onto something even more shocking, a small necklace. Inside is an old photo of Ephraini and her dad. Suddenly, the missing pieces start falling into place. Ephrain's dad used to be one of Deculin's own researchers. Now it all makes sense. The reason her family hates his guts is because the old Deculin totally used her dad, stealing his ideas and getting famous while tossing him to the curb. Thanks to him, Ephrain had to grow up dirt poor and struggling. Looking at the cold, hard proof, Deculin decides to flip the script. From now on, he is going to finish this broken project, using his crazy skills. And when it is finally done, he is slapping her dad's name right on the front cover where it belongs. Cut over to a campus cafe where a bunch of commoner students are hanging out. They are building their own squad, figuring they have to watch out for each other. If they do not team up, the rich snobs will just keep walking all over them. While they chat, one of the girls turns to Ephrain and asks if she is in. That puts her on the spot. Ephrain feels super awkward, since she actually comes from a fallen noble family herself. Still, she really does not care about throwing away her old fancy title. For her, real life is what matters, and right now she is pretty much broke and homeless. Hearing that, the orange-haired girl happily pulls her into the crew. The rest cheer her on voting Ephrain to be their official leader. A girl with short hair chimes in saying they should make this squad a real official club. There is just one catch. They need a teacher to sign off on it, which is going to be a massive headache. They think about asking Professor Rilin, but that guy is a total suck-up to the nobles, so that is a hard pass. Professor Carmel is basically the same, treating normal kids like trash. Someone else jokes that Deculin would be an awful pick too. Ephrain is not even paying attention, totally hypnotized by a sweet strawberry cake sitting on the table. While she is drooling over it, the orange-haired girl suddenly shouts that they should totally ask Professor Deculin. Before Ephrain can even blink, the whole group is begging her to go talk to him for them. Her face instantly drops. That is literally the absolute last thing she wants to do. One of the guys points out that Deculin is actually perfect since that jerk treats everyone like garbage no matter how rich they are. Getting off the hook, thanks to Deculin, is a pretty clear sign that the professor might actually favor Ephrain even just a little bit. Ephrain shuts that idea down right away, swearing that nothing like that is going on. This whole chat is really getting on her nerves. After everything that went down, she wants absolutely nothing to do with that guy. Shooting down their idea, she storms right out of the cafe. But her orange-haired friend Julia is not giving up and runs right after her. Julia keeps pushing the issue, trying to win her over. Ephrain sighs, spelling it out over and over that this crazy fantasy of theirs is just never going to happen. But the debate cuts off the second. Julia stops dead in her tracks. Totally lost, Ephrain tries to figure out what scared her friend. The reason becomes crystal clear. The second she spins around, locking eyes right with Deculin. Seriously, out of all the times to bump into him, it just had to be today. One look at the professor and Julia takes off sprinting, leaving our poor girl to deal with the mess by herself. Frozen in pure awkwardness, she scrambles to say something, anything, while Deculin is already turning to walk away, swallowing her nerves. She finally steps up and calls out to him. She quickly blurts out that they are trying to start a club and need a professor's approval. Even though she is dying of embarrassment inside, she pushes the words out. She even admits that she is pretty anxious about it, since professors almost never pay any attention to commoners. But hey, even if Julia was acting crazy, her logic kind of made sense. Ephrain figures they have nothing to lose by just asking, then completely blowing her mind. Deculin agrees to it without a single complaint. He signs the form on the spot and casually asks her to drop a full proposal. off at his office later on. Ephraim just stands there, staring at the signed paper in total disbelief. She honestly cannot understand how this guy's mind works. A few seconds later, Julia comes rushing back, absolutely hyped that Ephraim actually got his signature. But Ephraim is just left super confused. No matter how hard she thinks about it, she cannot figure out why he keeps acting so nice to her out of nowhere. Jumping ahead to their next class, Deculine is up at the front, teaching everyone about elements, the basic building blocks of all magic. He points out that an unbelievable amount of mages out there still do not get how categorical elements differ from pure ones. As he keeps talking, Ephraim totally zones out. Her mind keeps circling back to Deculine and his weird new attitude toward her. She questions if he is just feeling guilty, feeling sorry for her, or playing some other game. Because to her, this is still the same monster who drove her dad to his grave. No matter how many nice things he does, it all just feels super fake. In Ephraim's mind, if Deculine actually felt bad about what he did, he would stop playing the good guy and just confess the truth to the whole world. Catching her glaring into space, Julia leans over and asks if she is feeling alright, snapping Ephraim right back to reality. Julia figures she is just stressing over the students sitting on the other side of the room. Ephraim is confused for a second, until she realizes Julia is talking about Sylvia and the nobles. Ever since their big clash, Ephraim has basically become public enemy number one for every noble family around. Still, she waves it off, telling Julia to relax, because she just wants to pay attention to the class. Up front, Deculine dives into why magic circles are such a big deal. He shows them step by step how tweaking just a few lines in a circle can completely change a spell's effect. Taking things up a notch, he reveals the main event for today's lesson, an awesome concept he calls flowing fire. Watching him teach, Ephraim slowly notices that these classes feel totally different from his old lessons. Before, his lectures were basically just him showing off his talent and flexing his power in everyone's faces. But now, with Kim Woojin running the show inside Deculine's body, everything is totally flipped. Instead of bragging, he is actually taking the time to show them how beautiful magic really is, making sure they deeply grasp the core mechanics. This massive change leaves the whole room speechless, and even Sylvia gets sucked in. Since she was born a total magical prodigy, Sylvia had completely lost that fun, curious spark she used to have toward magic. But sitting here, that old sense of wonder is finally waking back up. Deculine keeps going, bringing out a glowing magic circle, made for water. He then smoothly merges it right into the fire circle, sparking a crazy reaction that nobody in the room has ever seen. A glowing purple circle blooms in the air, hooking every single eye in the class. What comes out is liquid fire flowing smoothly through the air, just like water. The whole class just stares in awe, but Sylvia is totally floored, because this lesson explores deep magical theories she never even expected. Usually, the big-shot geniuses in this world just rely on their natural talent and instincts to cast spells, treating the actual theory like a backup plan. If every single mage dug this deep into the theory, suddenly magic wouldn't be some big mystery anymore. Anyone could learn it using the exact same system. But here's the catch. Staring at textbooks all day actually holds back your real-world skills. It completely kills the natural gut feeling you need to actually master spells. It's a pretty cruel joke. Real geniuses just have this insane sixth sense, but if you ask even the brightest prodigies how they do it, they can't give you a straight answer. That's exactly why seeing a big-shot prodigy like Deculine, a guy with a ton of crazy rumors attached to his name, feels so bizarre. He's pouring his heart into teaching dry textbook theory. But as the class wraps up, Ephraim's whole view of the guy flips, totally upside down. She never in a million years thought he'd be this good at teaching. Honestly, she was hooked on every single word he said. But her trance breaks when loud, nasty insults bleed through the classroom door. Hearing the racket, her stomach drops. She figures it's just those stuck-up nobles trying to ruin her day again. Ever since her messy fight with Sylvia, her life has been a living nightmare. But then her eyes catch a mysterious envelope sliding under the door. She tears it open. Inside, a full-blown sponsorship certificate. Her jaw hits the floor. Knowing how much the Iliad family absolutely loathes her guts, she thinks there is zero chance someone is actually funding her. Still, she hangs on to the paper, figuring she can use it as evidence for a report. Grabbing her stuff, she marches straight to the magic admin office, just to get it checked. But in a massive plot twist, the document is 100% real. The second, the clerk points out the authentic seal. Ephraim's whole body jerks. A massive glowing smile takes over her face. She bites her lip, trying to play it cool, but the thrill is just too much. She even pinches her own cheeks hard, half expecting to wake up from some wild fantasy. But as the heavy truth finally sets in, the whole thing just feels even crazier. Ephraim frantically darts her eyes around the room, sweating that someone might have caught her happy dance. She basically dives for cover under a desk when she reads the amount. 100,000 elnez. Just to give you an idea of how insane that is. That's the same as 100 million won. The crushing weight of that much cash leaves her totally breathless. Her paranoia kicks into overdrive. She starts frantically stuffing her bags, fully convinced she's going to have to run for her life. Her sketchy movements are so obvious that even the office workers start giving her total side-eye. Ephraim is losing her mind right up until bam, she smashes her head on the table. The sharp sting finally proves she isn't dreaming. With the reality of her new fortune washing over her, heavy tears start streaming down her face for the first time in forever. This poor girl who spent years being treated like absolute dirt finally feels like her hard work actually means something. Getting that one nod of approval lights a massive fire in her chest, pushing her to grind even harder. It just goes to show how one tiny spark of kindness can bring a broken person back to life. But as we wipe our tears, the camera pans over to the Grand Eucline estate. Inside, Deculin's half-sister just caught wind of some troubling news. Turns out, her brother is heading straight for the Schatzinsel auction house. And yeah, the weird name doesn't stop her from pulling her hair out. The second the words leave the messenger's mouth, she sees red. Her brain instantly flashes back to last year, when Deculin casually blew 10 million elnas like it was pocket change. Just thinking about that giant hole in their budget makes her sick with panic over what he's going to waste their fortune on today. Knowing his wild track record, she is terrified that this little shopping trip is going to bankrupt them. Meanwhile, over at the flashy auction, Deculin is scanning the room for something that actually deserves his cash. Ever since he unlocked his telekinesis, he knew he had to find a cheat code to cover up his awful natural talent. Up until this very moment, he was barely scraping by using a makeshift weapon crafted from wood steel. But tonight, he can finally get his hands on the real deal. That's his main mission here. But while chilling in the exclusive VIP lounge, he locks eyes with someone he definitely didn't want to see, his fiancée Julie. Just another messy headache to deal with. The second Julie spots him, she shoots up from her seat and stomps right over, glaring daggers at him. You can just tell his mere existence pisses her off. She immediately brings up Sylvia and Ephraim, the two girls he recently dragged in for a nasty disciplinary hearing, and gets right in his face about it. But Deculin just coldly brushes her off, telling her that drama is ancient history, and asks if she's just here to pick a fight. Julie shoots him an icy glare, calling him out for crushing his young student's dreams with his terrible attitude. She warns him never to make those same mistakes again, wrapping up her speech by saying that this is the very last piece of advice he will ever get from her. The message is loud and clear. She is basically dumping him on the spot. Deculin just takes it all in. He instantly realizes she wants to call off their engagement, but honestly, he couldn't care less. Sure, Julie is absolutely gorgeous, but he has zero interest in tying the knot, just to fulfill some pointless family duty, especially not in a life that doesn't even really belong to him. Plus, Julie is basically a walking death flag. Being tied down to her could get him killed in a million different ways, and for all he knows, he could literally drop dead right on their wedding day. So instead of arguing back, he just stays quiet, letting her walk away. But one thing still bugs him. Julie really isn't the type to hang out at fancy auctions. So what is she even doing here? Wanting to mess with her a bit, he smirks and asks if she honestly showed up, just to get on his nerves. That totally catches her off guard. She immediately blushes, shoots back a denial, and insists that she only came to look for a specific item. Deculin tells her to chill out, amused by how she went from 0 to 100 in just a few seconds. Julie huffs and storms off, visibly pouting. And weirdly enough, Deculin actually finds it kind of cute. That thought totally throws him off. A weird feeling bubbles up inside his chest, making him wonder if his real self Kim Woojin is slowly getting mixed up with the original Deculin's feelings. Up until now, he has done a great job keeping his own personality in the driver's seat. But before he can overthink it, a loud voice echoes through the hall, letting everyone know the auction is finally starting. Deculin brushes the weird vibe off, figuring it is just muscle memory from the body he took over. As things kick off, they bring out the very first item, a fancy vase made by some master craftsman from the East. The second he lays eyes on it, Deculin spots a familiar golden glow shining from the vase, exactly like the one he saw, glowing around his research notes earlier. To his eyes, that shiny aura is total proof that the item is worth a fortune. The bidding war starts. After a few guys throw out their numbers, Deculin casually bumps the price up to 2,500,000 elnas. Just like that, it is sold to him. He didn't buy it because he is some huge fan of vases, but because he knows its true hidden value way exceeds what he just paid. Luckily, cash is the least of his problems. The guy is sitting on roughly 200 million elnas in his bank account. And that vase, that was just a warm-up. For the rest of the night, Deculin goes on a wild shopping spree, scooping up a magical ring, a super rare pair of scissors, and a rune necklace. And even after dropping bags of cash on all that loot, he still casually tosses out another bid for 5,500,000 elnas. The whole crowd is just staring at him, mind blown by how aggressively Professor Deculin is burning through his wallet. Julie, on the other hand, is not impressed at all. To her, he is just a massive show-off with way too much money and zero sense of how to actually use it. It just proves that they are complete opposites. While he is out here throwing cash around like it is nothing, she showed up with one very clear mission. She is here to win the Fire of Winter. Finally, the main event of the night rolls around. They bring out a crazy rare ore, packed with deep historical value. People literally call it nature's very own magic. The legendary Snowflare Stone, also known as the Fire of Winter, is finally on display. Just looking at it leaves both Deculine and Julie totally mesmerized. Back in the original game, this thing easily ranked top 10 for the rarest metals ever. Most people use it to forge epic swords, but its real power comes from its weird dual nature. The stone literally holds the ultimate power of both burning heat and freezing cold. The only thing better than this would be an actual dragon bone. For Deculane, this is exactly the jackpot he needed. Too bad Julie is just as desperate to get her hands on it. The bids skyrocket in seconds as a bunch of rich guys keep bumping the price higher and higher, until it hits a crazy 30 million elnas. Julie steps up proudly, calling out what she thinks is the absolute winning bid. You can literally see her eyes sparkling with excitement, thinking she finally bagged it. But then everything flips when a calm voice drops a cool 31 million elnas on the table. It is Deculin. Julie snaps her head toward him, absolutely furious. She cannot believe her own fiancé is blocking her from getting the one thing she came for. Refusing to back down, she grits her teeth and calls out 32 million. Deculin does not miss a beat. 33 million. The tension between them instantly steals the show. The crowd starts whispering, wondering why a magic professor like Deculin is fighting to the death for a sword-making rock. Some people even start guessing that he is just buying it to surprise Julie with a grand romantic gift. Honestly, to the audience, that is the only logical reason he would stop her from buying it herself. Meanwhile, Deculane suddenly realizes exactly who he just went to war with. The fact that Julie is fighting this hard proves just how badly she needs that Snowflare Stone. If he actually steals this win from her, she's going to hate his guts until the day he dies. At the same time, he absolutely needs that stone. This is the first time it has popped up in 3 years, and there is zero guarantee that another chance like this will come around anytime soon. Even knowing the massive risk, Deculin goes all in. The bidding war gets brutal, with both sides throwing down crazier and crazier numbers. Finally, the bid hits a jaw-dropping 42 million elmes. The gavel slams down, and the Snowflake Stone officially goes to Professor Deculin. The crowd goes absolutely wild, cheering like they just watched an epic showdown. But let us be real, it was just two filthy rich people throwing insane stacks of cash at each other. The crowd actually blames Julie for being stubborn, totally convinced that Deculin just bought the rock to impress her. Julie, however, is practically foaming at the mouth. Her blood is boiling, and this whole mess brings back horrible memories from last year. Back then, Deculin showered her with flashy diamonds and over-the-top gifts at their engagement party. While the guests thought it was super romantic, Julie remembers it as a total nightmare. The old Deculin was just flexing his money and power, which only made her sick to her stomach. Instead of feeling loved, she felt completely humiliated. For years, there has been exactly one thing she actually wanted from him, and he completely refused to give it to her. And hey, get your minds out of the gutter. I know exactly what you are thinking, but it is nothing like that. She ended up storming out and wrecking her own engagement party, which totally bruised his massive ego. Even with all her pride and skills as a knight, she got chained to a professor with a garbage reputation. Sure, dating him helped her become captain, but it also painted a massive target on her back for endless toxic gossip. And the worst part, Julie knows he started half of those nasty rumors himself. Because of that, she absolutely despises him. That horrible day proved to her that he was complete trash. Now, after losing the one thing she wanted, all that old rage comes flooding right back. But then, out of nowhere, Deculin walks straight up to her. Looking surprisingly soft, he casually asks if she was aiming for the Snowflake Stone too. Still seeing red, Julie figures he is just rubbing it in and gets ready to snap at him. Instead, he drops a massive bomb. He actually says, "I am sorry." Those 3 little words literally freeze her in place. Her brain short-circuits trying to process it. Guys like him do not apologize, but he just did. He gives a polite nod and walks away, leaving Julie rooted to the spot, completely mind-blown. She cannot even begin to figure out what his game is, as she finally snaps out of it and walks off. Still totally confused, she bumps into her stunning older sister Josephine, who drags her away for a chat. We cut back to Deculin. He knows exactly why Julie looked like she wanted to murder him over that stone. Thinking it over, he is honestly just glad a random death flag did not pop up right there, especially since he snatched the one thing she desperately needed. This whole mess gets him wondering about the old Deculin. Like, what kind of messed up stuff did he pull to make Julie literally kill him in the original timeline? Shaking it off, he heads back to the mansion, but the maids at the door are sweating bullets. Something is definitely wrong. The second they whisper that Uriel is here, Deculin turns to ice. But before he can even brace himself, his angry half-sister spawns right behind him, ready to rip his head off over the ridiculous pile of cash he just blew at the auction. She is absolutely livid. To her, that fortune was meant for mining investments and actual business deals, not for him to set on fire for a shiny rock. Trying to do damage control, Deculin smoothly explains that his purchases are actually a long-term investment. He promises huge returns, but sadly, that just throws gas on the fire. Uriel is already dead set on the idea that he treats her like a glorified maid who just cleans up his financial disasters. Even Deculin knows. He is walking on extremely thin ice here. She is practically crying out of pure frustration from dealing with his toxic spending habits. Uriel finally snaps, unleashing years of bottled-up stress. She screams about the family being broke and how she breaks her back to keep their estate afloat. While she is hustling nonstop to save them, he is out there dropping millions without blinking. Her rage hits such a peak that the whole room literally gets heavy. A glowing red aura flares up around her and her voice drops to a deadly chill. To her, Deculin is not just a bad brother. He is a greedy jerk who just flushed the Eucline family fortune down the drain. Deculin's villain destiny trait suddenly kicks in. This skill only ever reacts when real-life threatening danger is nearby, meaning he's dangerously close to triggering a death flag. Right then, he spots a faint golden light glowing inside Uriel's aura. That light is a clear warning. If he messes this up, he's dead meat. But if he plays his cards right, the payoff will be huge. It's basically a massive opportunity hiding behind a disaster. Knowing he has to act fast, Deculin calmly tells Uriel to just relax. Unsurprisingly, that is the absolute worst thing he could have said. She instantly blows her top again. She starts venting about every single hardship she's faced and every sacrifice she's made for her completely ungrateful brother. Deculin's reaction just makes things even weirder. He flatly tells her that she never had to carry all those burdens by herself. Of course, that doesn't help at all. Uriel snaps back that he's the whole reason those burdens even exist. Ever since their parents passed away, the family's bank accounts have been bleeding dry, all thanks to his reckless actions. Plus, blowing 150 million elnas in a single day is no joke. Realizing he needs a total game changer to calm her down, Deculin drops a bomb. He tells her he's stepping down as head of the family and giving the title to her. That completely stops her in her tracks. For a solid minute, her brain just short-circuits. Deculin repeats himself, swearing that he means every single word. Just seconds ago, Uriel looked ready to wring his neck. Now she's completely flustered. She thinks he has to be messing with her, while Deculin is just annoyed that she's dragging this out. To prove he's dead serious, he even offers to make a magical vow if she still doesn't believe him. That just shocks her even more. Making a vow like that is super dangerous, since breaking it literally costs you your life. She has absolutely no idea what's gotten into him, even wondering if he bumped his head on the way home. Honestly, Deculin doesn't care if she buys it or not, but eventually, Uriel accepts the deal. She gives him one final warning though. If he backs out of this, she will bury him herself. With that intense threat hanging in the air, she storms off to clean up his latest financial mess. The second she's gone, Deculin gets 2 points for avoiding a death flag. Letting out a massive sigh of relief, he realizes just how close he came to dying right there. Personally, giving up the family head title doesn't bother him one bit. If things keep going this smoothly, he's pretty sure his chances of escaping this world are only getting better. Right at that moment, Ganesha pops out of nowhere. She comments on the fight she just eavesdropped on, admitting that he actually seems serious about turning over a new leaf. After a quick apology for crashing his place, she admits she was genuinely stunned by how he handled that. Deculin just brushes it off, saying it wasn't a big deal at all. In his eyes, Uriel is just way better suited to lead the family than he could ever be. But then Ganesha brings up her investigation and drops a bombshell that completely catches him off guard. According to her intel, Uriel doesn't have a single drop of Eucline blood in her veins. This revelation actually shocks Deculin, because that wasn't in the original game's plot. Sure, he knew they were only half-siblings, but finding out they aren't blood-related at all, that changes everything. Seeing his reaction, Ganesha lightly reminds him that he was the one who asked her to look into it. Still, Deculin quickly regains his ice-cold composure. He flatly says it doesn't matter. That reaction shocks Ganesha even more than the secret itself. She never expected him to brush off something so huge. Still, she agrees to keep it a secret. But before heading out, Ganesha drops one last piece of crucial news. The 6 snakeheads are making their move. These guys run a notorious underground crime syndicate, and every single one of them has a multi-million elnas bounty on their head. As she hops onto the windowsill to leave, she pauses to give him one final warning. Those snakeheads, they're hunting down the very item Deculin bought at the auction. She heavily implies that he better watch his back from now on, especially since his magical defenses have been pretty sloppy lately. With that, she vanishes into the night, leaving only a white handkerchief fluttering behind. As for the crazy secret about Uriel, Deculin realizes he really doesn't care at all. Blood-related or not, it changes absolutely nothing. After all, he's not the real Deculin anyway. To him, Uriel is family, and no biological technicality is going to change that. Meanwhile, deep in the woods, Ganesha and her crew are chilling around a campfire, gossiping about Deculine's sudden change in personality. Ganesha admits she's pretty impressed by what she saw, but one of her guys instantly starts teasing her. He jokes that she's just got a soft spot for handsome guys, so her judgment is totally clouded. That instantly earns him a furious glare, with Ganesha threatening to slice him into tiny pieces. While the group keeps bickering, Rayleigh, an adventurer who just so happens to be related to Julie, brushing the dirt off her clothes, she admits she's pretty shocked. Who knew Deculin actually had a human side? Anisha nods, completely agreeing that he's really changed. Because of that, she tells the crew they can call off the search for a captive mage. For him. Then she orders the squad to head back, warning them to keep everything they saw today strictly under wraps. With that, the adventurers trigger their teleport magic. A blinding flash of light instantly sweeps them up into the night sky. The next day, deep inside the Imperial University's magic tower, Deculin spends some time scrolling through the system shop. While checking out his options, he spots a level 1 trait that boosts both mana quality and output. That instantly catches his eye because it's the exact kind of upgrade he needs right now. Sadly, the trait costs 10 store coins. Even though he finally unlocked the shop, he's completely broke. The system strictly requires shop coins to buy any skills or traits, and earning those coins is locked behind the shop's current level. To make things worse, every single time he levels up, the price of literally everything doubles. Deculin knows he can't afford to waste a single coin. He's been grinding through his daily training, without fail, but one massive glaring weakness is still holding him back. Monkaida's physical fitness. If he wants to actually get stronger, he desperately needs higher quality mana to push his training to the next level. Right now, he's still short by 4 coins. Realizing he needs to get his hands on those points as soon as possible, he starts brainstorming ways to earn them. While he's weighing his options, Alan walks in looking totally stressed out. He hands Deculin the latest copy of the Mage's Journal. Flipping through the pages, Deculin quickly spots a wanted poster. It features a guy named Lockhart, the infamous mage killer. According to the news report, this criminal was just spotted roaming right outside the region. Deculin instantly recognizes the threat. The mage killer is a notorious nightmare for mage players, and now he's officially entered the storyline. But honestly, Deculin doesn't even flinch, because he's no ordinary mage. He doesn't view Lockhart the way everyone else does. Instead, he looks at this whole mess as the perfect chance to farm some extra shop coins. Deep down, he's actually hoping they bump into each other. Turning to Alan, Deculin calmly tells him to take a breath and that there's absolutely zero reason to panic, suggesting he just go chill in the library instead. Then, completely out of nowhere, he asks Alan if he wants to be an assistant professor. The sudden offer drops Alan's jaw straight to the floor. He seriously can't believe what he's hearing. I mean, Deculin spent years trashing his total lack of talent. Getting a recommendation from this guy feels impossible. As Alan starts firing off question after question in a panic, Deculin quickly cuts him off, telling him to just zip it. He then tosses him a bracelet carved with the Eucline crest. The gesture completely melts Alan's heart, and he instantly blurts out his thanks. Meanwhile, Deculin is busy thinking about just how incredibly useful Alan's skills are going to be down the road. Sure, Alan might be a pretty lousy mage, but the guy is an absolute lifesaver when it comes to sorting paperwork, managing files, and handling all the annoying little chores. Deculin has zero intention of letting him slip away. So many people bailed on him because of his icy personality and nasty attitude, but Alan stuck by him through thick and thin, just doing his job without a single complaint. Wanting to reward that kind of hardcore loyalty, Deculin hands over a fat stack of cash and tells him to go treat himself to a nice meal. With that out of the way, Deculin heads straight for the faculty-only library. His goal? To dig into Luna's research on crafting pure elements. But the second he actually starts reading through the notes, he spots a ridiculous amount of flaws and typos. Naturally, he starts fixing them one by one. While doing that, he's also keeping an eye out for any rare grimoires related to manipulation magic. But as he's strolling down the library aisles, Deculin suddenly catches sight of Sylvia, digging through the bookshelves. Seeing her immediately makes him raise an eyebrow, because she definitely shouldn't be in here. This entire section is strictly off-limits to anyone but the teaching staff, so about 10 minutes earlier Sylvia had slipped into the executive reading room. While hunting for some study guides, the librarian had tried to block her at the door since students absolutely aren't allowed inside. But another professor stepped in and totally overruled the poor librarian. Professor Relin argued that Sylvia's status, as the heir to the Iliad family and literally the top rookie mage of the year, was more than enough reason to bend the rules. Left with zero options, the librarian reluctantly let her through. But the funny thing is, the reason Sylvia snuck in here had absolutely nothing to do with her noble status. She's just a massive nerd for classic literature and languages. And today, she's hunting for a novel written in Ethel, the ancient language used by the extinct fairies. Books in that language are insanely rare to find. That is exactly why she sneaked into an area usually off-limits to students totally lost in her research. Sylvia doesn't even hear Deculine walking up behind her until he suddenly demands to know what she is doing in the executive reading room. He demands answers right away, warning her that she might get dragged in front of the disciplinary committee all over again. That threat catches her totally off guard. She had already heard the whispers about how strict Deculin is when it comes to the library. For a second, Sylvia wonders if he is actually going to force her into another hearing. Quickly pulling herself together, she explains that Professor Relin gave her a pass to come inside while she hunted down a specific document. But that excuse only makes Deculin judge the situation even harsher. He instantly decides that both Relin and the librarian just completely ignored the university rules. In his eyes, everyone involved deserves to be punished. While Sylvia is still processing his harsh words, Deculin snatches the book right out of her hands and flips through the pages. Instantly, he recognizes it as an ethanol novel. Raising an eyebrow, he asks if she can actually read it, though he points out that is not really his main problem right now. Sylvia defends herself, explaining her passion for ancient literature and dead languages. Deculin drops the subject, deciding to let it slide for the moment. However, he makes his stance crystal clear. If she breaks the rules again without the right paperwork, she is going straight to detention. He also warns her not to rely on the Iliad family name whenever she wants to sneak into restricted zones. Instead, she needs to find someone with actual clearance to check out the books for her. With that final warning, Deculin just turns around and walks away. Left standing there alone, Sylvia quietly boils with anger. The whole encounter leaves her feeling deeply embarrassed. All she wanted was to learn a bit more about the fairies and figure out the ethanol language. Yet Deculin seriously doubted if she could even read the book thanks to the crazy inconsistencies and sheer complexity of the language itself. But at the same time, she notices something weird. Even though he confronted her, Deculin never actually seemed that focused on punishing her for trespassing. That thought sticks in her head long after he is gone. Meanwhile, deep inside the wild, a squad of adventurers pushes through the thick woods, tracking down a magical beast. Deculin watches them in dead silence, noticing just how calm and focused they stay even though this is their very first hands-on training drill. The squad is currently stationed inside the Mountain of Darkness, one of the most crucial spots controlled by the Magic Tower. Because it is so important, the entire area is heavily guarded and watched around the clock. The woods surrounding the mountain also double as a training camp for students, near the campus simply because it is packed with magical resources. But those exact same resources draw in tons of deadly creatures. Toxic monsters roam all over the region, turning it into a massive death trap. To handle the threat, the Magic Tower keeps strong shields up and runs constant patrols across the zone. While getting everything ready, Professor Relin starts worrying about the fact that the head professor spot, the one in charge of watching over the Mountain of Darkness, is still completely empty. To everyone's absolute shock, Deculin steps right up and volunteers for the job. The rest of the staff instantly cheers him on and approves the move. One guy even thinks to himself that this is exactly how a real leader acts. But honestly, Deculin is not doing this to be a hero. A side quest called Darkness of the Magic Tower just popped up in front of him, offering store cash along with a sweet bonus achievement reward. More importantly, he feels this weird magnetic pull dragging him straight toward the mountain. That gut feeling tells him there is a hidden catch to this whole quest. Knowing how the game works, he realizes this exact event is a massive turning point for the story. This is the exact moment where the game slowly shifts into straight-up horror mode. As soon as the head professor role is locked in, the final prep is done, and the entire crew heads out on the expedition. Fast forward a few hours. About 9 hours later, we cut away from the mountain to a cozy cafe near the Magic Tower. Ephraim and her friends are just chilling and grabbing some snacks. The vibes are great as they celebrate Ephraim locking in her new sponsorship along with her fresh stack of 100,000 elnas. Ephraim is so hyped that she offers to treat everyone and pay the whole bill herself. While munching on their food, they naturally start chatting about their newly approved club and what they want to do for the very first official meetup. Right in the middle of talking, one of her friends brings up a recent training boot camp happening over at the Mountain of Darkness. Apparently, around 50 people signed up for it, even with all those crazy accidents that randomly happen out there. But before they can say another word, a blood-curdling scream echoes through the air. Seconds later, the ground violently shakes right under their feet. Panicking, they all rush outside. Out of nowhere, they spot someone sprinting for their life, screaming for help. But right away, something feels off. Julia senses it and yells for Ephraim to stop. But Ephraim ignores her, rushing straight toward the chaos. After running a bit, she suddenly stops. She looks back only to realize her friends are completely gone. Panic starts to kick in. The whole area looks totally different now, and somehow, she's been completely separated from the group. Remembering those desperate screams, she spots a shadow in the distance and calls out to them. But as she gets closer, every instinct in her body screams that this is a trap. Suddenly, a blood-curdling screech erupts from the figure, and its body twists into an absolute monster. Realizing she's under attack, Ephraim instantly gets ready to fight. But before she can even move, Deculin appears out of thin air, scaring the life out of her. Taking in the scene, Ephraim jumps straight to conclusions. She accuses him of attacking an innocent civilian, yelling about how he has no right to do that. Deculin stays ice cold. He just tells her to look a little closer. As the fake image around the figure fades away, the ugly truth comes out. That wasn't a human at all. It was a demon. Deculin casually explains that she fell right into an illusion spell, one of the cheapest tricks demons use. Ephraim still tries to step in, but Deculin coldly orders her to stay out of his way. Right on cue, the demon lunges straight at him. Forced to act, Deculin jumps into the fight. The monster tries to make a run for it, which only pisses him off even more. As the clash kicks off, Deculin sharply analyzes his target. He quickly figures out that the illusion magic is the beast's main weapon, catching sight of the glowing core locked right in its forehead. Thanks to his built-in resistance to mental attacks, the creature's mind games are completely useless against him. But as the fight heats up, something else starts waking up deep inside. Deculin's blood begins to boil with pure rage, all thanks to the Eucline bloodline pumping through his veins. The Eucline family has always been famous for being ultimate demon hunters. Their blood naturally purifies the mana around them, boosts its power, and makes their attacks super deadly against anything demonic. The catch: it sends their aggression through the roof whenever a demon is nearby. That ancient hunter instinct is now roaring to life inside him. The legendary power that made demons fear the Euclines for generations is wide awake, dragging him right into the slaughter. Instead of fighting it, Deculin embraces the rush and swears to wipe this ugly thing off the map. His rage keeps building as the monster throws everything it has at him. Right then, a system alert pops up saying the side quest is done. He scores some extra cash for the shop and officially bags his very first demon kill. Along with that sweet achievement, the Eucline trait is fully unlocked. Calling the beast filthy trash, Deculin wraps up the fight, ending its miserable life once and for all. But this win doesn't make him feel any better. Staring down at the dead monster, something about its sudden appearance really bothers him. Then it hits him like a truck. This thing didn't just show up by random chance. Its being here means something way bigger. This beast showing up proves that the game's storyline is moving forward all on its own, even without a player forcing the plot. The world itself is sticking to the original script. This heavy realization leaves Deculin on edge, because it proves the dangers waiting for him are totally real. The next day, inside the university, Ephraim snaps awake in a blind panic and lets out a huge scream. Confused and scared out of her mind, she finds herself lying in a clinic bed with a nurse sitting right there. The nurse calmly asks if she's finally awake. Ephraim vaguely remembers being deep in the woods, but everything feels super blurry and broken into pieces. Seeing her completely lost, the nurse breaks it down. A demon had shown up on the mountain of darkness, and she got caught in one of its nasty illusions, knocking her out cold. Once they found her, she was brought back safe and sound. But much to her annoyance, she finds out the guy who saved her was none other than Professor Deculin. Glancing up at the clock, Ephraim asks what day it is, only to get hit with another massive shock. The nurse casually drops that she's been out cold for 36 hours straight. It's already Wednesday. Realizing how much class time she just slept through, Ephraim goes into full panic mode. Spotting her two friends nearby, she bolts out the door and barely makes it to class before the bell rings. Her friend breathes a sigh of relief, seeing her on her feet, saying she visited the clinic a bunch of times while she was knocked out. As everyone grabs their seats, they find out today's going to be a special lecture. Moments later, Deculin struts into the room, with Alan trailing right behind him carrying a box. Ephraim instantly spots the weird setup and wonders what on earth Alan is doing here. Not wasting a single second, Deculin introduces him to the class and drops a bombshell. Alan is going to be his new teaching assistant from now on. The whole room is stunned. Deculin has always worked entirely alone, so nobody saw it coming when he suddenly took on an assistant. People start whispering that scoring a spot as his teaching assistant could seriously boost a person's career. But honestly, with Deculin's shady track record, that's highly debatable. Hearing the news just makes Ephraim think about her dad. Despite how skilled he was, her dad never managed to land a teaching assistant gig, even well into his 30s. Thinking about it leaves her wondering why Deculin suddenly picked Alan for the job out of nowhere. Before anyone can dwell on it, Deculin announces that today's class is all about hands-on practice instead of the usual textbook theory. He hands out an assignment and sets a hard timer, giving them exactly 3 hours to get it done. As Ephraim dives into the work, her mind keeps drifting back to her father. She glances at her bracelet and notices it looks awfully similar to something linked to Deculin. This gets her wondering what kind of history her dad actually had with the guy. Throw in Deculin's sudden kindness lately and the whole puzzle just gets even messier. Shaking off those thoughts, she zeroes in on the assignment. Meanwhile, Sylvia finishes the whole thing in just 25 minutes and 15 seconds. The whole room is completely speechless. Most of the class can't even wrap their heads around her finishing in under 30 minutes. Alan and Deculine quietly check her results. After a quick look, Deculine simply tells Sylvia she can go. Sylvia might be glad to get out of there so fast, but her deep anger toward him is still just as strong as ever. As the clock ticks down, Ephraim is still struggling with the work. One by one, the other students finish up or run out of time and Deculine dismisses them. Pretty soon the entire classroom empties out, leaving Ephraim completely alone. By now she's feeling totally crushed and hopeless. Sure that she's already failed, she drops her head onto her desk, desperately trying to come up with an answer. Thinking about how easily Sylvia finished only makes things worse. Not only did she fail to beat her, but she also ended up being the only student who couldn't even finish the assignment before the timer ran out. Her frustration quickly turns into self-hate. She starts insulting herself, calling herself stupid, totally useless, and completely incompetent for messing up something that seems so basic. The longer she just sits there, the deeper she sinks into a dark place. Suddenly, a voice cuts right through the dead silence. Deculine points out that it's already been 5 hours and 40 minutes. He coldly asks how much longer she plans to keep him waiting. Startled, Ephraim quickly looks up. He's still sitting right there, he never even left. But instead of offering any comfort, Deculine harshly criticizes her attitude. He points out that she couldn't even finish a basic task on time, and then she wasted even more time, just having a meltdown over it. According to him, it doesn't matter who laughs at her, who beats her, or even if someone she hates is standing right in front of her face. A real mage has to stay calm, rational and logical no matter what happens. He flat out tells her that anyone with such a weak mindset is never going to reach his level. The disappointment in his voice is crystal clear as he turns around and walks right out of the room. Left totally alone, Ephraim just sits there in stunned silence. The classroom is empty with nothing but the ticking clock echoing in the background. Suddenly, she slams her fist down on the desk in pure frustration. Deculine's harsh words just keep echoing in her head, especially the part about him believing in her potential. At first, she just wants to block it all out, but the more she replays his words, the more determined she gets. As her emotions hit a boiling point, a bright green light suddenly flashes from her bracelet. Her aura completely wraps around her body as her drive hits its peak. Fueled by pure frustration, anger, and total stubbornness, she swears to herself that she's going to finish this assignment no matter what happens. Meanwhile, Deculine is thinking back on everything that just happened with her training. Even though he spent a ton of time and effort just pushing her to her limits, he knows it had to be done. That demon showing up on the Mountain of Darkness was a clear warning sign. The main quest is about to kick off, and with a massive wave of evil closing in, strong fighters with a solid sense of justice are going to rise up. And right there with them will be a way stronger version of Ephraim. Right now, she's lacking that mental toughness. She doesn't fully grasp the heavy weight of being a real mage just yet. Still, Deculine hopes she can push past those flaws. He wants her to grow into an absolute threat, someone strong enough to even put up a real fight against him. Even with that threat, lingering Deculine stays totally confident. He firmly believes that hard work beats fate every time, and there's no way he's letting someone else's destiny put them ahead of him. Eventually, Ephraim finally marches up to Deculine's office, holding her finished assignment. Dropping the results on his desk, she proves that she actually finished what everyone else thought she couldn't. Deculine checks the clock and notes that it took her exactly 6 hours and 25 minutes to get it done. Even though he openly admits she's at a disadvantage since she didn't come up through the regular academy system, he can't deny how good her work actually is. In his eyes, these results easily deserve first place. Right then, his side quest marks as complete, paying him out with some extra shop currency. Now that Ephraim is finally back on track, Deculine decides it is time to head home. But before he can step out, a white-haired man walks right up to him. Deculine spots him right away. It is Zate von Bruggen. This guy is Julie's older brother and the current head of the Frightened family. Zate is also the main person who set up the engagement, the arranged marriage between Deculine and Julie. And more importantly, this guy is seriously overpowered. When it comes to pure combat, he ranks even higher than Ganesha and is famous all over the world. He is an absolute beast. So naturally, Deculine gets suspicious and just cannot figure out why. Why would someone like Zate suddenly come looking for him? His mind immediately jumps back to that incident, the whole Snowflare Stone drama with Julie. Even though Deculine does not hate Zate, he keeps his guard up. There is no telling if this meeting is a death trap or not. But to his surprise, Zate is not looking for a fight. Instead, he casually brings up some concerns about how things are going between Deculine and Julie. Playing it off as just a friendly hangout, he invites him out for dinner. Without a good reason to say no, Deculine agrees right away. Zate looks pretty happy with the quick yes. He promises to handle all the plans himself, even offering to make sure the food perfectly matches Deculine's taste. It does not take long for Deculine to catch on. This whole meetup was totally planned from the start. Zate already blocked off any chance for him to back out, knowing just how much he cares about family matters. He deeply values his family and reputation. Deculine knows that fighting back without a solid excuse would cause a huge mess. For now, playing along is definitely the safest bet. The very next day over at the Frightened Mansion, the mood is pretty clear. Julie totally blows up the second she hears about this dinner setup. Pure frustration takes over, and she makes it very clear how much she dislikes Deculin. She complains she's already swamped and simply has zero time for pointless social events. To her, going to this dinner is just dragging her down. It is nothing more than a giant waste of time. But sadly for Julie, Zayt absolutely does not care to listen. He brushes her off completely, calling her out for acting like a literal child over something so small. And it is all because of that snowflare stone. Getting told off like that just makes Julie even more furious. But Zayt just keeps going. In his eyes, Deculin probably bought that rare metal for a really good reason. The snowflare stone is mostly used to forge weapons, but he figures the plan was to give it to Julie as a gift all along. Instead of chilling out, hearing that just sets Julie off even more. She flat out tells him what is going to happen. If Deculin actually shows up with that stone as a gift, she swears she will break off the engagement right then and there. That threat instantly pushes Zayt over the edge. For a split second, you can clearly see the raw anger on his face. Julie shuts up right away. After taking a breath, he warns her to actually use her brain before opening her mouth. He reminds her that feelings do not matter in politics and family business. You cannot just make huge choices based on how you feel. Then, he hits her with a super direct question. He asks if she actually has feelings for someone else, even though as far as he knows there is absolutely no one. There is not a single guy chasing after her right now. Julie instantly shoots that idea down and says, no way. She says nothing like that is going on. Zayt switches gears and asks if her issue is all about Deculin's bad reputation and his messy past. Once again, she denies it. According to Julie, her feelings have zero to do with that stuff. Her super vague answer just makes Zayt even more annoyed. But despite getting irritated, he just takes her word for it. He decides to drop the subject and gets ready to leave. He just drops one last rule for their dinner. He tells her to show up on time and warns her to fix whatever attitude problems she has before the meetup. The second he steps out of the room, Julie totally loses it. All that bottled up frustration just explodes. Gripping her sword, she unleashes a storm of heavy strikes. She throws pure rage into every single swing with insane power. It is so heavy that shockwaves literally rip through the room. The blasts shake everything around her. Hiding in the back, a bunch of her knights just silently watch her freak out. One of them notices how wild and messy her form is right now, whispering that her sword path has gone totally chaotic. The guy talking is Varen, a knight from the Hydecane Order serving under Julie. Realizing she just let all her feelings spill out, Julie quickly apologizes. She says sorry for showing such an embarrassing side of herself. But Varen does not judge her at all. He totally gets why she is so mad. Honestly, he personally thinks it is super unfair that the current head of the house, he's forcing her into a marriage with a guy like Deculin. But before he can say another word, Julie sharply cuts him off, warning him not to badmouth her fiancé. Even so, she brushes it off, adding that none of this really matters to her anyway. Hearing that flat tone leaves Varen completely speechless. Julie catches his reaction but doesn't push it. Instead, she just turns her back and orders him to get everything ready while she changes to head out. Once Julie is gone, Varen is left standing there deep in thought. His mind drifts to the dark path he chose for himself and the mission he swore to finish. The way he sees it, he is the only one who can pull this off. And more importantly, he truly believes that finishing this job will finally make Julie happy. That thought alone fuels his drive. No matter what stands in his way, he has already made up his mind to see this through to the bitter end. Meanwhile, at the Birched Elder Assembly, a massive high-stakes meeting is going down. The main topic on the table is the sudden appearance of a demon deep inside the Mountain of Darkness. The elders break down the situation, looking back at the magic they forged through the mystic arts spells made specifically to wipe out demonic forces. After going over all the facts, they finally agree on one thing. The time to strike is right now. The head of the council wastes zero time and barks out orders. He tells his guys to send letters out to the 12 Grand Sorcerers, calling every single one of them back to Birched. With the vote settled, the letters are fired off right away, setting a massive chain of events into motion. Meanwhile, Deculin is busy sorting out the loot he just snagged from the auction. His haul includes Rufarin's ring, a piece that boosts mana recovery, and the ancient rune necklace, an artifact built specifically for storing extra mana. Keeping Ganesha's warning about sneaky thieves in the back of his mind, he decides to lock up most of the leftover gear inside a secure vault. But there is one specific item that keeps bugging him, the Snowflare Stone. Unlike the rest of his treasures, this rock refuses to react the way he wants it to. Deculin never expected to master it right off the bat, but he definitely did not expect his telekinesis to be completely useless against it. It feels like the stone is actively fighting back, using its own heavy mana. Considering the insane amount of cash he dropped to win this thing, the whole situation is seriously getting on his nerves. While racking his brain for a fix in memory sparks, he recalls reading up on a concept called communion during a recent trip to the library. It was a classic technique used to tame legendary swords by forming a deep bond with them. This gets Dekulin thinking. Maybe real mastery actually requires understanding the core nature of the object itself, figuring he has absolutely nothing to lose. He reaches out and tries to link up with the Snowflare Stone. The exact second his skin makes contact, a massive shockwave of energy rushes through his entire body. Surprisingly, the crazy idea actually works. He gains 0.1% understanding of the stone, and his total mana pool instantly jumps up by 300. It is an awesome result, but it comes with a major catch. At this painfully slow pace, fully mastering this rock would take at least a whole year, simply because the process drains an insane amount of his energy. For now, he decides to just put a pin in it and focus on bigger problems right in front of him. Glancing down at his planner, Dekulin spots the upcoming dinner hosted by Zeit, but as he double-checks the date, his face completely stiffens. This dinner was set up way before he ever took over this body, and there is another huge date closing in fast. In just 3 short days, the anniversary of the tragic passing will be here. Both of these events are weighing heavily on his mind. Later on, when Dekulin finally pulls up to the restaurant, Zeit is already there waiting. He casually drops that Julie, who headed out a bit early, should already be inside waiting. Stepping in, he greets her with a warm smile, complimenting how great she looks. And then Dekulin gets a real good look at her. For a split second, he is completely blown away. Julie looks wildly different from her usual self. Gone is her normal, battle-ready armor. Instead, she is rocking a gorgeous, elegant dress that leaves him speechless. Deep down, Dekulin cannot help but admire all the effort she clearly put into dressing up for him today. But right beside her stands another woman, the exact person who helped her pick out this stunning outfit. At first glance, Dekulin was so wrapped up in staring at Julie that he completely missed her. But the second his eyes lock onto her, alarm bells start ringing in his head. That woman is Josephine, Julie's terrifying older sister. Josephine is not just some random relative. She is a major named character and someone Dekulin absolutely cannot afford to mess with. Unlike normal folks, Josephine will pull every dirty trick in the book just to get what she wants. To put it bluntly, she is a total sociopath. But even crazier, she is the mastermind running Shadow, a top-secret intelligence network that pulls the strings from the dark, packing enough influence to actually rival Zeit himself. And the absolute only person in the world she cares about is Julie. Anyone who even looks at her little sister the wrong way is asking for a quick trip to the grave. Dekulin immediately connects the dots on why Josephine has not tried to take him out just yet, but the icy glare she is giving him says it all. Her killer instinct is bubbling right below the surface, just begging for an excuse to snap. If he ever does anything to break Julie's heart, Josephine will not hesitate to destroy him. Spotting this massive red flag, Dekulin quickly figures out that the safest path forward. Dekulin is hard at work trying to prove to Josephine that his feelings for Julie are actually genuine. But before he can even wrap his head around things, Zeit cuts right to the chase, bringing up the exact topic he came to discuss. He looks dead at Dekulin and asks when the engagement ceremony is happening, bluntly reminding him that it has been 3 whole years. Julie tries to step in, but Zeit shuts her down instantly, telling her that the adults are talking. Before Dekulin can even put a sentence together, a crushing pressure rolls off Josephine, making him freeze for a split second. Locking eyes with her, he drops a bombshell. He flat out says that the future of their engagement rests entirely in Julie's hands. If she wants out, he will gladly respect her choice. Hearing this completely shakes Julie to her core. Zeit immediately pushes back, pointing out that neither of their families would ever allow such an easy breakup. Still reeling from Dekulin's words, Julie turns to Zeit and begs for a moment alone. Zeit thinks it over for a second before nodding. He and Josephine step out of the room together, but Josephine is clearly still dying to know what happens. Watching them walk out, Dekulin tries to figure out what Zeit is really playing at. Meanwhile, Josephine hovers just outside with a glass of wine, eager to see how this drama unfolds. It takes about 2 seconds for Dekulin to realize she is using some kind of magic skill to eavesdrop on them. Thinking back to how she acted earlier, he bets her little laugh was just a cover to plant a listening bug. But instead of panicking, Dekulin sees a golden opportunity. If he can just make Josephine believe his feelings for Julie are real, he can cross off one of the biggest death flags hanging over his head. Turning his attention back to Julie, Dekulin starts laying it all out. He tells her he meant every word he said. This just leaves her even more confused. Dekulin goes on explaining that this engagement has dragged out way too long. They are way past the point of just calling it off. Annoyed, Julie fires right back at his logic. She sharply reminds him that before this whole thing even started, he threw his weight around to force this setup. He went behind her back to deal with the family elders, threw money at them, and basically bullied everyone into this match. Her temper flaring up, she yells at him for constantly ruining her life. She points out how he blocked her from dangerous front lines and tried to crush her dream of joining the Imperial Knights. He even shoved her into leading the Hadouken Order, a group entirely controlled by his own family. And then there were the nasty rumors he spread when she turned him down. The sheer rage in her voice proves she is nowhere near forgiving him. Deculing does not even try to deny it. Instead, he straight up owns it, admitting he manipulated her, held her back, and did unforgivable things. Julie refuses to buy his act, totally convinced this is just another one of his sick mind games. But Deculing just keeps owning up to his mess. Then he flips the script entirely. He points out that both Zeit and Josephine are stepping way out of line. If their family status was not on the line, neither of them would care less if they broke off this engagement. With Josephine silently listening in from the hallway, Deculing goes even deeper. He tells Julie that if she is truly serious about becoming a knight, she might have to cut ties with her family down the road. In a shockingly raw moment, he confesses that he lacks everything she looks for in a man. He is not exactly honest, loyal, or a good person. In fact, he is the living opposite of everything she fights for, making him a terrible match for her. But instead of telling her to just break it off, he pitches a totally different idea. They can stay engaged forever but never actually tie the knot. This would totally free Julie from all the toxic politics between their families. Plus, it would shield her from outside pressure. Deculing swears that if he could, he would let her go completely. But for right now, he is offering to let her use his name as a shield until she is strong enough to chase her dreams alone. He promises to wait for that day to come. Completely blindsided by this total personality flip, Julie demands to know why on earth he is doing this. Deculing answers with a calm voice, saying he wants nothing in return. The only thing he asks is for her to smile at him just once a month. That is it. Just one smile. This answer leaves Julie completely speechless and flustered. Even Josephine, eavesdropping from outside, is totally stunned for a second. But in reality, Deculing knows he is playing right into her hands, saying exactly what she wants to hear. Because right now, dodging a death flag is his #1 priority. Still, he cannot help but notice Julie blushing and stammering. Surprisingly, he finds it kind of adorable. With a tiny smirk, he admits to himself that she actually managed to win him over for a second there. Julie immediately snaps back, insisting she will not fall for his little mind games. But even so, she bites her lip and says if he is actually being real, she wants proof. Meanwhile, out in the hallway, Josephine is starting to second-guess everything she thought she knew about Deculing. This might actually be the real deal. Deciding he needs more intel, he keeps a close eye on them. Meanwhile, Deculing gets a notification. He successfully dodged another deadly fate, bagging 2 extra shop coins in the process. 3 days fly by and the anniversary of a tragic death finally arrives. Deculing drives up to the cemetery. As he slowly strolls through the silent grounds, a mess of complicated feelings churns inside him. The setting sun bathes the tall grass and weathered tombstones in a warm golden glow. Even though this place means absolutely nothing to Deculing himself, it holds an immense weight for Kim Woojin, the man he used to be. As he wanders past the graves, a sudden memory bubbles up from his past. It pulls him right back to a conversation between his old self Kim Woojin and his team leader Yu Era. During that talk, Ara pitched the idea of tossing a cool little Easter egg into Deculing's backstory. She wanted to flesh out his character, with the author's blessing, totally convinced it would give the game more depth. Woojin shot it down right away, arguing it was just unnecessary fluff, and that it would only pile more extra work onto the dev team. But Ara wasn't having it. She stood her ground, insisting the addition was totally worth the effort, because they needed to pour some genuine care into the game they were building. Eventually, Woojin just caved. He still didn't see the point of adding random lore that had zero ties to the main plot, even after giving her the green light. Woojin just couldn't wrap his head around why Era cared so much. She stayed fully confident, swearing it wouldn't be a waste of time. Her idea was simple. Deculing needed a dead fiancé in his past. Thinking back on it now, Woojin remembers how passionate she always was about sprinkling those tiny creative details into their work. He catches himself wondering what hooked her so badly on the tragic fiancé concept. Did she do it for the sake of the team, or was it just another one of her classic ways of looking out for the people she cared about? He also recalls a weird inside joke tucked inside that Easter egg, one that had her giggling back then. Snapping back to reality, Deculing shifts through the scattered pieces of Woojin's memories, trying to see the bigger picture. He seriously wonders if Ara's choices were rooted in kindness or if it was just pure cruelty. Soon enough, he stops dead in his tracks in front of a tombstone carved with the name Yu Ara von Vergis Manicht. Staring blankly at the stone, he wonders how on earth he ended up here. But the answer hits him hard. Deculing's character design was basically a carbon copy of Kim Woojin himself, and Ara actually chose to use her own name for Deculing's dead fiancé. That realization leaves him feeling hollow, wondering if he ever even said thank you. Dropping down to one knee, Deculing reaches out and rests his hand against the cold stone. The second his fingers brush it, a floodgate of memories bursts open. He hears Ara's soft voice praising his artwork. Remembers the time she draped her coat over his shoulders, all the warmth she showed him, and the full 7 years they spent side by side. One memory crashes into the next until it becomes way too much to handle. Hot tears suddenly start streaming down his face, as he relives every single feeling he tried to bury. But while he's breaking down, someone lurking in the shadows is watching him. boiling with absolute rage. A little time passes and Deculane finally pulls himself together and walks away. As he leaves the grave behind, he realizes his tears have already dried up. He quietly chalks it up to his cold new persona kicking in to keep his emotions in check. But right before he can step out of the gates, he feels a chill down his spine. Someone's tailing him. Spinning around, he locks eyes with Lockhart. The guy is just standing there, oozing pure, murderous intent. Lockhart actually looks a bit shocked that Deculane recognizes him right off the bat. After all, this notorious mage killer has become a literal walking nightmare for magic users everywhere. But Deculane already knows exactly who he is. Lockhart's greatest weapon is his terrifying skill, magic nullification. That insane power makes him the ultimate hard counter to pretty much any sorcerer he runs into. As long as you step into his range, your spells are instantly rendered useless. Aside from needing to be up close, his ability has almost zero drawbacks. Riding high on that confidence, Lockhart gets cocky, bragging about his magic immunity while lunging at Deculane for the kill. He throws punch after punch, but instead of freaking out like a normal wizard would, Deculane casually weaves through every single strike with pinpoint precision. Dodging it all so effortlessly leaves Lockhart totally stunned. He was expecting pure panic, not absolute composure. Boiling with frustration, Lockhart winds up for an even heavier strike, only to eat a brutal counterattack straight to the jaw. While the killer stumbles back, Deculane flatly tells him that fighting back is pointless, and he's not just talking big. A few days ago, Deculane finally grinded out 10 shop coins and unlocked the mana enhancement skill. He had been hoarding his points for this massive upgrade to his overall mana pool. While testing it out in training, he realized that not only could he pump out way more mana with barely a sweat, but the actual effects of his magic got a huge boost too, way further than he ever expected. But the biggest shock comes when he grabs a training baton and accidentally crushes it in his grip. Turns out the upgrade didn't just boost his stats, it massively spiked his raw physical strength too. The fight instantly turns into a complete beatdown. Lockhart desperately tries to turn the tables, but he is totally overwhelmed and left pinned against the dirt, entirely beaten. By surviving yet another death flag, Deculane scores some extra shop coins. Looking back at the clash, he admits, he initially figured his Iron Man trait would be enough to handle this mess, but his recent upgrades made this brawl ridiculously easy. Still, even while eating dirt, Lockhart refuses to throw in the towel. Pissed off, he keeps spitting insults at Deculane, screaming that he is a backstabber. As Deculane watches his frantic behavior and weird fighting style, everything suddenly clicks. He realizes Lockhart isn't just some normal guy. He actually belongs to the Red Box race. This drops Lockhart's jaw. He never expected someone to expose his true identity this fast. The Red Box are literal descendants of demons named after the unique birthmarks branded on their bodies. Scattered all over the continent, they are forced to hide in the shadows because they are the natural enemies of mages, since magic was basically invented to wipe out demons. The bloody war between wizards and the Red Box has always been this world's biggest conflict and a massive chunk of the game's lore. Standing tall over the broken man, Deculane finally sees the bigger picture. Thanks to his cursed bloodline, the Red Box live in constant terror, and he gets this sinking feeling that a massive witch hunt is already in motion. He completely gets the nightmare Lockhart and his people have lived through. But he shoots straight, telling him that slaughtering innocent wizards just makes him the exact monster he despises. Boiling with rage, Lockhart screams at him to shut up and just finish the job. But Deculane drops a bombshell. He flat out says he doesn't believe the Red Box are born evil. Lockhart instantly snaps back, calling him a massive hypocrite. Keeping his cool, Deculane calmly explains that the only time he ever truly loses control is when he faces actual real-deal demons. That bloodlust is hardwired into the Eucline DNA. For generations, his family has been butchering demons, and that killer instinct is still buried deep inside his bones. It is not something he can just turn off. He asks why he would ever throw away his pride and composure over some cheap taunts. Then he lays it out straight. The Red Box are humans too, which means they can actually be trusted. Moments later, a squad of inspectors finally shows up. Before they can make things messy, Deculane knocks Lockhart out cold, making sure the guy can be arrested smoothly, without kicking up a fuss. One of the officers steps up, introducing himself as Ropa, mind blown by the aftermath of the brawl. He hypes up Deculane's crazy kicking power, even joking around, asking if he should pump the criminal a few more times, just for kicks. Deculane brushes it off, saying that won't be necessary. Then, flexing his magic, he literally rips a nearby tree right out of the ground, leaving Ropa completely speechless. Deculane smoothly shapes the heavy timber into a special magic-suppressing rope and hands it over. He warns them that normal handcuffs wouldn't even leave a scratch on a guy like Lockhart. After that, he casually asks if Ropa was already patrolling nearby, because they showed up insanely fast. The question catches the officer off guard. Ropa explains he only rushed over, because somebody called in a report and he just assumed Deculane was the one who tipped them off. Deculane brushes off the mix-up. guessing some random witness heard the chaos and called the cops. With everything wrapped up nicely, he leaves the mess to the authorities and heads out. As he walks away, a huge wave of relief washes over him. Things ended without any messy bloodshed, and honestly, that is a total win in his book. He has zero interest in hurting people if he can avoid it. The very next day, Uriel drops by his training room holding a letter sent straight from Bert. The seal instantly grabs his attention, because Bert hasn't called a summit in 15 long years. Taking the envelope, Deculin can't help but wonder if she really walked all the way down here just to play mailman, figuring this kind of stuff was usually her job to handle anyway. Ripping it open, he quickly finds out the summit is all about that recent demon attack, over at the Mountain of Darkness. The big shots at Birch are calling in mages from across the entire realm to deal with the crisis. Right on cue, a brand new main quest pops up right in front of his eyes. The meeting is set for exactly 1 week from now, and everyone gets to bring a single bodyguard. Uriel instantly votes for taking Jeff. Deculin shoots that idea down in a heartbeat. He reminds her that Jeff is literally just their driver and barely knows how to hold a weapon. Still, Uriel stubbornly insists he needs some kind of backup since the road to Berkt is notoriously dangerous. Hearing the genuine panic in her voice actually catches him off guard. He realizes she is genuinely terrified for his safety. Flustered, Uriel quickly raises her voice, insisting she only cares because she doesn't want him dropping dead, before he officially hands over the title of family head. With a faint blush on her cheeks, she offers to pick out a proper guard for him. Deculin takes her up on it, leaving the whole thing entirely in her hands. Meanwhile, over at the Freyden outpost, Julie is busy keeping an eye on a group of rookie knights running through their sword drills. As she works, one of the vice captains watches her from a distance, quietly wrestling with a tough call. Before he can even speak, Veron suddenly chimes in on his thoughts, making him jump since he had not even noticed Veron standing right behind him. Once he catches his breath, the vice captain explains that a fresh mission just came in for their squad. The catch is, he really is not sure if Julie is going to sign off on it. Veron pushes him to just ask her anyway, but the vice captain hesitates when spilling the details. The job is to protect Deculin. Actually, the real task is to guard the entire train he will be riding on. The request was purposely worded like that, because everyone knows Julie would absolutely shoot it down if it was just about protecting Deculin himself. Veron instantly tells him they should take the job. He argues that pulling this off would really boost the Order's reputation and bring in some much-needed cash. Even so, the vice captain keeps stressing over how Julie might react. Veron cuts him off, stating with absolute confidence that their captain would never let her personal feelings get in the way of her actual job. Feeling a bit better after hearing that, the vice captain finally makes up his mind to bring it up to Julie, while Veron hangs back, wearing a dark, unreadable look on his face. Way up north lies Berkt, also known as Alpens, an intimidating region sitting 3,500 meters above sea level. All across the continent, just hearing that name commands massive respect and authority. It acts as the home base for the Elders, pretty much the strongest gathering of mages out there. Every single magic academy in the world bows down to Berkt's influence, in the end, with the magic tower itself playing a huge part in it. But what really makes Berkt so special is the legendary floating island where the mages actually live. Even the absolute best sorcerers alive have to fall in line with the rules made inside its borders. Because of its massive authority and status, Berkt is widely seen as the main pillar, holding up the entire magic world. Getting called up by them is a huge honor and a true sign of prestige among top-tier mages, but that honor also carries a much darker vibe. All throughout the magic community, people whisper that a summons to Berkt is basically a one-way ticket to a mage's grave. The scene then cuts to the train station handling trips up to Berkt. It is business as usual out on the platform. Workers are doing their jobs, passengers are saying their goodbyes, and everything is getting set up without a single hitch. Julie is checking over the final details, making sure everything is absolutely perfect. A little while later, Deculin shows up with Alan right beside him, and the guy is basically buzzing with excitement. The kid is totally mind-blown seeing snow fall in April, and he can barely believe he actually gets to experience something like this. But their moment is cut short when Julie walks over and formally lets Deculin know that the Freyden Knights will be in charge of guarding the first half of their train ride. The second Deculin looks at her, he really has to fight to keep a straight face. Julie is obviously having a total meltdown on the inside. Her face goes from pale white to bright red in a matter of seconds. Even though she is panicking, she stands up straight and professionally promises him that her squad will do whatever it takes to keep everyone safe and make sure the trip goes smoothly. But inside her head, it is absolute chaos. A memory of Deculin's weird request is looping in her brain, the one where he told her she had to smile at him once a month. Now she just cannot stop overthinking if she should give him a big grin, a tiny smirk, or somewhere right in the middle. The whole thing has her completely stressed out, as the awkward silence just keeps dragging on. The vice captain quietly admires how professional Julie is being, Even though she really cannot stand Deculane, she is obviously doing everything she can to step up and handle her job. Before things can get any more tense, Veron finally steps right up and introduces himself as the guy who will be running the security detail from here on out. Deculin immediately sizes him up. Veron calmly explains that he is going to personally oversee their protection while the rest of the group is mostly just there to get some field experience and build up their reputation. The vice captain laughs, giving Veron a friendly pat on the shoulder before calling him one of the absolute best guys in their order. He guarantees them that they are in really good hands. Even so, Deculin decides to take a closer look at Veron activating his sharp vision skill. Strangely enough, he doesn't spot anything too out of the ordinary, though he just cannot shake this weird gut feeling that something is off. Moving right along, Veron lays out the security plan. Every cabin is getting its own guard, and he plans on personally staying right inside Deculin's cabin. With everything packed and ready to go, the departure preparations are finally done. Julie wishes them a safe trip, and immediately turns on her heel to leave. But just before she walks away, she glances back and forces a stiff smile at Deculin. It looks so fake that it's honestly a little sad. He has absolutely no clue what's going through her head, while the vice captain quietly wonders if his captain is feeling all right. Deculin, on the other hand, quickly figures out that she is just keeping the promise she made to him earlier. Fast forward a few hours, and the train ride is in full swing. Settling deep into his cabin seat, Deculin tells Veron to get some rest, since they still have a long way to go. Veron takes the offer and quickly dozes off. Now left alone in the quiet cabin, Deculin starts thinking about the summons from Bircht, a place famously known as the Graveyard of Mages. To him, there has to be a hidden reason why Bircht acts as the core of the magical world, yet holds such a dark and terrifying reputation. He wonders if the weird incidents that happen during every assembly are tied to this very mystery. Knowing damn well that they could be attacked on the road, Deculin refuses to leave anything to chance. He knows that past versions of himself died because they lost a battle of wits, not a test of strength. Because of this, he isn't about to take any stupid risks. Instead, he puts all his focus into figuring out which train routes are the safest, steering clear of paths that scream disaster. He knows he could just buy info to find the best way out, and he admits that the original Deculin's network of shady underworld contacts would have made this a breeze. But ever since taking over this body, he has completely cut ties with those sketchy people. Rather than relying on their dirty work, he chose to build up his own defenses and dive deep into mastering advanced combat moves, using his heavy comprehension skills. Glancing over at Alan, he finds it kind of funny that the kid is already out cold. Just a few days ago, Alan was basically crying tears of joy for getting to tag along to Bircht. Deculin almost finds the whole thing cute right until he spots a line of drool running down Alan's chin. With his total germaphobe tendencies, that gross sight instantly kills the mood. Still, he can't help but feel amazed at how hyped up Alan was for this trip. Before long, the train gets closer to Bircht, and Deculin is honestly a little shocked at how smooth the ride has been so far. Despite all this crazy prep work, nothing bad has happened at all. Before hitting the road, he went out of his way to beef up his defenses. Thanks to the powers of his Midas touch, he tweaked his jacket and shoes, cranking up their defense stats and pushing the skill to its absolute limits. A bit earlier, the core manipulation of Midas touch even let him custom tailor his gear to fit his exact needs. His wood steel shurikens got a massive upgrade. 2. He beefed up a bunch of wood steel pieces and secretly planted them all over the train cars. He even slipped a few into Alan's clothes just in case things went sideways. On top of that, he reinforced their protective robes with Midas touch to make them tough as nails. Yet with all this backup ready to go, something is still eating at him. Spamming Midas touch like that completely drained his mana reserves, leaving his tank way lower than usual. He knows he had to do it, but now he's just praying he won't actually need to use any of it. Letting out a heavy sigh, he silently hopes the rest of the ride stays chill. But of course, fate has a funny way of ruining things. Out of nowhere, the front of the train bursts into flames as a massive explosion rips right through it. A few days before Deculin left, Sylvia was having a chat with her dad Giltheon, gently asking her to put her book down for a second. Giltheon asks if the magic tower is working her too hard. Sylvia admits that while she can handle the grind, she does skip a class here and there. She clearly hates talking about it, but Giltheon doesn't even look mad. Instead, he gives her a warm smile, telling her it's fine and praises her hustle. He knows exactly how much she pushes herself, carrying the heavy weight of trying to become an archmage. But hearing that just makes Sylvia scoff. To her, someone who trips up on the basic stuff has absolutely no right to dream about the archmage title. As the tension drops, Sylvia softly admits she doesn't really care about Ephraim anymore. Even then, he is still super curious to hear Deculin's takes on certain magic theories, changing the subject entirely. She asks her dad why they're heading to Birch so early, since the assembly doesn't even start for a few days. Giltheon lets out a heavy sigh before dropping the truth. According to him, Birch is way more than just a fancy meetup for top-tier mages. Folks actually call it the mage graveyard. That grabs Sylvia's attention right away. She always thought it was just some creepy old myth. But Glythian drops a bomb. The stories are completely real. He breaks down the dark truth behind the Birch summons. Somehow, every single gathering ends up claiming mages' lives. Flashing back 15 years, he recalls how 11 guests never made it back. Yet even with that deadly risk, getting this invite is still the ultimate flex for any mage out there. Out of countless noble bloodlines, only 20 make the cut. And saying no, totally off the table. Showing up brings massive clout and cements your family's legacy forever. Skipping it means harsh payback and getting permanently blacklisted from the elite magical ranks. Back out, and your family just loses their seat to the next bloodline in line. Glythion then hits Sylvia with a chilling question. If you wanted to wipe out powerful rivals without drawing any heat, what better cover could you ask for than Birch itself? Sylvia is totally stunned by what that really means. Her dad spells it out. This gathering is not just for chatting. It is a brutal filter, wiping out any unwanted mages. Meanwhile, the power-hungry ones use the bloodbath to climb the ladder. That dark truth is exactly why he booked an early ride. Thanks to his insiders, Glythion found out that some shady groups were plotting to ambush the later trains. Not wanting to play games with their lives, he packed up early and dragged Sylvia along. Above all else, he needed her to see just how vicious this world really is right up close. As far as he is concerned, every dirty mage pulling these stunts deserves payback. After all, getting killed on the road to Birch is basically just considered natural causes for a wizard now. Cut back to the present. Alan and Deculine are knocked out cold on their train when all hell finally breaks loose. A massive explosion rocks the cars jolting, Deculine and Veron wide awake in an instant. Meanwhile, Alan practically loses his mind at the blinding flash outside. Freaking out and trying to make sense of the chaos, he stutters in pure terror. Then he spots something absolutely insane. The whole train is hovering in midair, but what he misses is that Deculine stepped up the second that bomb went off. Flexing his telekinesis, he caught the wrecked train before it could fall, and slammed it right back onto the tracks. Sure, his one-star martial arts have been handy, but right now he is thanking his lucky stars that he maxed out his telekinesis before heading to Birch. Outside, a squad of thugs is creeping across the roof, gearing up for an ambush. They are gunning for a train packed with elite professors and heavy-hitter mages. The bounty on this heist is absolutely insane, making the crazy risk totally worth it to them. Watching these guys crawl into position, Deculin just cracks a cold smirk. In his eyes, these idiots just picked the worst train on Earth to rob. Their luck has officially run dry. Without missing a beat, he unleashes his wood steel shards. The deadly spikes rip right through the ambushers, wiping them out in a flash. Alan's jaw hits the floor watching this brutal scene, which prompts Deculine to just knock the kid out cold, so he stops panicking.